So good morning. Everybody excited about the topic we're going to cover today? A topic really close to my heart. The whole data and AI environment is exploding. Let me jump into, so why are we here? I'm going to move this mic over here. There's a journey we go on every day. No matter what industry you're in, what vertical, how big or small your company is, you're trying to find the ultimate insight, right, from data. So this cartoon I saw, it kind of resonated to me, right? It kind of said, ultimately, we're all dealing with lots of data points. Now, as I started in my journey 33 years ago, data was back in the day of mainframes, punch cards. Now I'm really dating myself. Probably people on the call and even on the Zoom probably don't even know what punch cards are. Google them, you'll find them. But ultimately, what's interesting is the availability and the access to data back 20, 30 years ago was very different than the availability of data today. Now, someone asked me in my journey, is it better today than it was 20 or 30 years ago? I said to them, I don't know if it's better, but there's more. And with more, it doesn't mean it's better. It just means it creates more complexity. And that's what we're in right now. We're in a world of complexity. The goal ultimately, though, as you build that data and kind of go through the transformation of building data into information that creates knowledge. What you do with that knowledge and how you apply it turns into those elements of improving your processes, your business, your products, your customer engagement, going after new prospects. But that then creates the insight and ultimately the wisdom. Now, with AI, you can do this much more quickly and more efficiently today. But with AI, you need better data. And when Gurpinder, who's my head of data management for Dun & Bradstreet, came to me about 6-7 weeks ago, this data AI summit was just a figment of our imagination, right? So I said, Gurpinder, we probably need to get clients with our partners together and just for 6 hours, strategize, share with them what we're doing and what we're thinking about, and then have a forum that's intimate. Right? Now, I know people are virtual on this call. There's about 300 different people who've registered, different countries. I know one of the colleagues I used to work with down in South America is actually logged in. But I know we have the same common thread. We're trying to find answers. And we're trying to find answers in advance of entering the new calendar year, especially given what's going to happen in November. We need more answers. We need to figure out where are we going, not just in the US, but globally. So that's kind of this continuum we're on. Taking the data, turn it to wisdom, and then helping to get powered with that, with the AI. Lots of companies are announcing AI, right? There's not one day that passes you don't hear some organization launching some dynamic version of AI-based solutions. The question, though, is how much money is that generating? Not just in the stock price, but in the quality and the value you're delivering to your clients. And so I'm hoping today, each of you are able to walk away with better insights into what is it that we're looking to do, what is it we can do collectively, because we're trying to build this community of information, of sharing best practices about data, but also how and when do you apply AI. We have a jam-packed agenda. It's a great topics and great information with panels. We have Hilary Wandal, one of our LCE, legal compliance and ethics leader. She'll share with you kind of what we're thinking about with the regulatory requirements and all the things of keeping ethics front and center when you're talking about AI. But at the end of the day, we're looking to help drive business results because that's what you're getting here and that's what you're trying to go walk away with. So here's the agenda. 9:40, we're going to go through a keynote. Gary Kodovitz, who's our Chief Data Officer, will share you some insights on what we're thinking about with AI and with data. We're going to have a panel conversation. We'll then do a customer case study. So you'll hear directly from a customer as to what and how they've applied this and what value and benefits they achieved. We'll then go into a networking lunch. That lunch is meant for each of you to connect with each other, with some of your Dun & Bradstreet colleagues, with some of the partners we've brought with us, to have deeper, more meaningful conversations. Now, if you have questions during the meeting, please ask. This is meant to be interactive. This is not a one-way street. So please, even those that are on the phone, I know we have a bunch of people on Zoom actually governing and monitoring the questions. Please ask them. And then lastly, we have in the afternoon the ethics and compliance and governance process, and then also the expert panel. We'll try to adjourn by 3 o'clock. So that way, at least some of you can then continue the conversation of networking after or depart on your way. So thank you for coming today. Thanks for your attention. I know it's hard taking time out of the day to kind of come even for 6 hours. But I'm hoping and you're going to see the actual material shared is really of value to help you take your business forward. So thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I'm really excited to be part of this event. And I do apologize for not being available and seeing all of you in person. But I'm sure there'll be a lot of follow-ups and a lot of opportunity to meet in person and talk over the phone and on an as needed basis. So today I kind of wanted to walk you through, I would say a bit of a kind of holistic view of where AI is and what the current trends are, and from my kind of lens and point of view, but also walk you through D&B's journey a little bit and how we've been able to evolve and get through this kind of very rapidly evolving and extremely exciting time for our company and as well as for our customers. And so, I thought that this kind of gives you as a more holistic perspective, but also hopefully you can come out of get out of this kind of conversation and presentation looking at Dun & Bradstreet not just as a data company, but also as an example of a company that has been going through an AI, what I call AI evolution or AI journey, and the kinds of opportunities and of course challenges that we faced along the way, and hopefully that's going to be a productive and informative session. Let's go to the next slide, please, and slide 4 in the current. So as I think about this quote, right, a lot of things kind of go through my head, and I have seen in many ways the changes that AI and companies that use AI have gone through, and there's probably dozens and if not hundreds of quotes out there that are spread out in the last I would say 2 years, and within every segment, maybe every week or every 2 weeks, there's some change, right, and some new kind of way in which company think about AI and how the world thinks about AI. But when I read this quote, for some reason, the number one thing that kind of comes to my head is the notorious B.I.G. song, which is "More money, more problems." And really what I mean by that is that you've got kind of this immense amount of, technology and capabilities that just have been enabled for the world, right? And everybody's rushing to start taking advantage of these capabilities, and they want to implement it, and they want to integrate it, and they want to create new applications. They want to see improvements in efficiencies. They want to generate revenue. They want to improve productivity. So there's a lot of different capabilities that run through everybody's minds in terms of where and how this can be used. But you got to really be realistic, right? You got to have to take a step back, which is sort of what we did at D&B. We took a little bit of a step back and said, okay, we sort of know what this is. We know what LLMs are. We know what the opportunities are, but we also know what the risks and challenges will be, right? And so how do I manage, quote unquote, the more problems, right, that will come out of this capabilities? And how do I make sure that I start my journey on the right tracks, right? And I establish a strong foundation on which I can build these products and these capabilities. And really it starts with data, right? And it really starts with how you think about data, how you manage your data, how you trust your data, how your data is organized and validated within your organization. Really, once you establish that foundation, you can build a lot of capabilities and immense amount of, I would say, products and services that are going to be at scale. And you will be able to, deploy these things at a much faster rate because you've set the right foundations and you've put the right foundations in place. And so let me go to the next slide, please. So this kind of talks about, separating the hype from reality. Like we knew, right, what the good is, right? And everybody understood that, right? But when we started to rush in to see and start using these large language models, we saw what the bad was as well, right? Hallucinations was sort of the top of mind for everyone. And, I thought to myself, when I was putting this presentation together, hallucinations were a problem when this came out. I would say, sometime around last year, or March or February. But by the way, they still are, right? If you think about the time it takes for the large language models to be, trained and deployed and moved into production, or even created and then, trained, deployed, and moved into production. And the amount of versions that have come out since, Chat GPT, or Gemini, and before that, we had IBM with Watson X. Now we have IBM with a lot of open source models like Mixtral. There's a lot of models there and a lot of tools that you can use to deploy those models, but you still have to validate and test to see how well they work within the data that you have, right? And hallucination still is one of our biggest challenges, right? Biased, right, is another one. Limited explainability, vulnerability, of course, and data manipulation, right? Ethical, regulatory, legal concerns, and of course, new types of cyber threats. Those are still challenges, right? They have not gone away, right? They've evolved. In some instances, they're better, they've been diminished in some other instances and other use cases, using other, different types of tools and capabilities. They've actually expanded or grown. And right, so those are the things that you have to still look out for, unfortunately. And these are the things that you still have to be very mindful of when you're deploying these products and services, whether you're building something on your own internally or whether you're licensing, a third-party application or third-party large language model for your own internal or external use cases. So go to the next slide. And, we're seeing companies, starting to deploy, and I'm sure you've all heard and seen this in the news, and a lot of you probably have been doing a lot of these things yourselves, right? But, with the problems and with the opportunities, the use cases are still more or less the same, right? You've got, people thinking about, as I mentioned, efficiencies, productivity, and I would say, creation of new insights, right? And so more holistically, one of the key challenges, for us, and really, I think for our customers, when we thought about how do we implement these products and services that we will be creating using Gen AI, is what is the return, right? And what is the measurable way that we can see how much our clients or ourselves have benefited from deploying these capabilities. So it wasn't just about checking the box and making, and saying, I have a Gen AI capability, I'm going to go out in the market and just deploy it or tell the world that I have something. It was really more about a much more pragmatic approach and a more measured and measurable approach, right? And I think that was also one of the keys in our strategy when we were thinking about AI. And I strongly recommend, as you think about your journeys within your worlds, to really consider, what I'd like to say, almost like think about the end, right? Think about the end state, or almost like the press release, right? As you kind of, in your sort of product development journey or a business development journey, you always think about what's the press release going to say, right? And as you think about that press release, you want to sort of say, okay, I don't have just a Gen AI capability. I have developed or deployed or licensed or am utilizing this capability, and I am gaining X% of I see X% of productivity gain as a result. I've seen efficiency gains of Y, or I've deployed a new product and it's driving X amount of revenue growth. And those are the things that I think people will pay attention to. And it's less about what you used and which large language model and which capability. People care about results, right? And they want to see how um, uh, how useful this capability has been in terms inside your own organization, and how you've been taking advantage of it. And I think that's also a great way to understand whether obviously the investment you've made is worth the while. So let me go to a little bit about kind of how D&B was thinking about this, and some of the kind of assets that we have already had in place. And in some ways, it kind of helped us, I would say, take this off the ground much faster. And it goes a little bit towards the whole point around um, your foundation, right? And thinking about data as your foundation, thinking about your cyber as a foundation and cybersecurity, and thinking about your legal compliance and ethical components as your foundation. So let's go to the next slide 8, please. So the biggest challenges we knew right out of the gate, and this kind of goes back to the previous slides, is data quality, right? And how do you build the foundation, right? And data quality was one of the big aspects, right? We needed to make sure that even for ourselves, right, the sourcing of the data, where we collect the data from, how we organize it and structure it, and ensuring that it's available to us in a way that where I can see, for example, lineage and transparency, where I can understand the volume of that data, and I can understand how to scale it in a way that is cost efficient. I wanted to understand, the different applications that my data is sitting in, like, in terms of the different data silos, and how do I connect it together? How do I then place it and create a way that where every question that the LLM answers, I can explain, right? So explainability was one of the other biggest components of our strategy. And obviously, I would say encased inside data security and privacy, I would say framework, right? That is both physical data security and privacy, as well as sort of operational components. The next slide, please. And so, as you connect all those pieces together, right, this was sort of how we were able to deploy things into market, I would say, pretty quickly, right? So, you improve your data integrity, and as I spoke about, right, you eliminate the solid applications, you connect it to the enterprise visibility, and then you fill in the reporting gaps, which is sort of understanding and tracking and measuring, as I was talking about, in terms of what's the ROI, right? How do you know that the task that was just performed, and it took that task, let's say on average, half an hour to 2 hours per person, has now decreased to 10 minutes or 5 minutes. And so how are you able to track that impact, right? As well as track, again, how the data and how the analytics and how these capabilities are driving the return on that investment, and how do you connect, again, all these things together into one, I would say, comprehensive offering. So let's go to the next slide. So our advantage in this instance was that we were already sitting on a very organized, structured data asset, right? That's the DUNS, and or that's keto of the DUNS, right? We also, pride ourselves in being the trusted source, right? And we pride ourselves in ensuring that we obtain our data from trusted sources, right? We also, ensure that we are continuously validating those sources and making sure that the data that's coming in and that we're feeding to our customers, that's organized and structured against the DUNS, is a data asset that our clients can use without having to perhaps go through and embed, heavy of a, legal compliance and ethical capability, or heavy of a cybersecurity capability, because, we kind of did some of that pre-work for them and maybe can reduce some of that overhead going forward. Our expertise, and I think it's not just our expertise, I think it's any of your expertise in-house, right? Who understand the subject matter, understand the data that they're dealing with, understanding the use cases you want to apply it in, understand your customers' use cases. And so that's obviously, it's sort of logical, but it is an important key factor, but it is an incredibly important component when you think about scalability, right? So our ability to go out with these products and services quickly was also in part because of the people that we had, right? And the expertise that we had in-house. We already used a lot of the AI capabilities as well historically. So we've been using large language models inside our own, I would say, data factory for a variety of different use cases, whether it's data quality or data improvements. And so we, again, kind of going back to those expertise, we had the right skills and the experience with these capabilities, right? The technology, and we'll dig into that a little bit more in the next slides. And I'll walk you through sort of what our strategy has been, right? Our idea was not to because of all the rapidly changing technologies and large language model providers across the hyperscalers, we decided to take a much more neutral approach. And I'll explain a little bit later what that means. Let's go to the next slide. And so this is how all these pieces come together. Responsible AI, I talked about, that foundational component, which is making sure you've got your, legal compliance, ethical, as well as your cyber frameworks, right? And your guardrails established, right? Make sure that you're also not just, doing it in the vacuum, but you're also part of, a community, right? Because a lot of these aspects are shareable and informative or I would say extremely important if you start to combine them together with other inputs either from your customers or from your colleagues across the industry. And so we became part of the Data and Trust Alliance, for example, that was formed between IBM and Meta and a lot of other large corporations. Our strategic relationships, and this is kind of where it starts to get into the technology, but also equally, I would say, we think about our partners as technology providers, but also as go-to-market providers or enablers, right? We knew that, look, we've had established our Gen AI capabilities, but our sales force would be the only, should not be really the only ones who would be enabled, right, to go out in the market and provide these capabilities. We needed, broader reach, and we wanted broader reach. And so we partnered with technology providers like Google, IBM, and Databricks, where we thought we had kind of best of both worlds, right? We've got their technology stacks that we were able to use and deploy across our products, but we were also able to use a lot of their distribution channels to get our products out there. LLM stacks, as you can see, is pretty diverse as well. And there's a reason for that, right? As I mentioned, you've got a lot of positives or pros and cons about using different types of models across different types of capabilities, right? And so we wanted to be as flexible as we can when we're building our agent-based I would say, orchestration, and we wanted to make sure that it's completely swappable, right? So, as OpenAI becomes better than Vertex or Gemini, or as Mixtral becomes better than Gemini, or as Watson X AI and Granite becomes better in certain cases, we wanted to make sure as our use cases evolve that I can plug and play with the different models across the different products and services. So, and then we created a kind of a more horizontal, right, aspect, because all of these pieces come together inside our AI labs, right? So what is our labs? It's really literally an environment that allows ourselves to develop our new products and services, and then we also allow our customers to come in and experiment, right? One of the things that we realized when we were going out and speaking to clients about what they want, a lot of customers said they don't know what they want, right? And so we said, okay, well, why don't we just give you a place that you can come in? We'll give you all the tools, all the technology, and we'll give you even our people to help you create and play with things that you can then potentially deploy or reuse inside your own enterprise. And so these are the types of, having that lab, like we started to kind of see, right, what people wanted to do, right? So, obviously, and these kind of goes back to what I was saying before, which is accelerating and simplifying decisioning, enable new types of decisions, right? Reduce cost of decision, improve productivity. The same themes are continuously, being repeated across our customers. And so when we put all these pieces together along with our data, it enabled them to, as I said, realize the returns that they can get out of deploying these products within their enterprise. And so this was an incredibly powerful, in my opinion, right, kind of combination of a framework that that allowed us to go to market, I would say, pretty quickly, right, with services, capabilities, and usage across our customer base. So let's go to the next slide. And so, I know we talked a lot about responsible AI, but I think I can't say it enough, right? It is what we have, embedded, ingrained in our minds, right? Ingrained in our capabilities, and that is what we pride ourselves, right? Because we are we have, we believe and we see it, from our customers, right, that we are the trusted source, right? And so you've got kind of a trusted source combined with a not so sure kind of capabilities that are coming out in the market, like LLMs and the different platforms. How do we, pull those capabilities into that, I would say, that, under the tent of trust, right, that our clients are used to getting from us and are used to when they're dealing with us, right? As it relates to, making some of the most critical decisions around whether it's in sales and marketing, whether it's in risk, whether it's in compliance, or credit decisioning. And so these are the pillars, right, that we've created around our AI trusted framework. And I'm not going to go through every one of them, but you can kind of see that, they all sort of speak for themselves, and in terms of how seriously we take this, right, aspect of this of the AI, right? I would say, products and services, and how we go through each of these steps, right? Every time we choose to create or deploy a new capability, right? And it is a pretty robust process. I would say it's pretty, in some instances, some can argue, oh, it takes too long to approve this, or it takes, or we have to go through 10 different steps to go through the different checks and validations and everything else. And But you know what? Like once it comes out and you've got these pieces embedded with the product, the realization or time to value, as I like to call it, right, decreases significantly because you're immediately, I would say, removing those barriers, right, of concern and challenge, and issues that a chief compliance officer or chief legal officer would have, or CIO or chief security officer would have before they choose to deploy your capabilities inside their enterprise, okay, or even your capabilities inside your own enterprise, right? And so that's why I wanted to make sure that this is kind of emphasized and we talk about it here. So let's go to the next slide. And as we kind of conclude, I wanted to sort of just share what we're continuing to see, right, in the market. So increased automation and efficiency, right? So that's still the same, right? People are still running towards that as the main reason for deploying your AI capabilities within your enterprise, right? We talked about ethics and regulations. Those are still there, right? And they continue to evolve. They continue to become much more complex. And as you think about your data journey, and as you think about your AI journey, you have to make sure that these components are there and they're evolving along with you and your capabilities and products. Advancements in large language models. I mean, we talk about that, in terms of how quickly and how fast and how much these models have evolved, even from as early as when they just came out 2 years ago, right? And every day something new comes out, and every day some new feature, some new capability. They do become better and better all the time, right? We're seeing disruptions in industries and sectors like supply chain management, for example. As I mentioned before, collaboration between AI and humans is going to be a continued and a very important component of the way that this is being used and deployed, and finding that right balance between decisions that are made by the AI and which decisions are made by AI versus the decisions you still rely on the human to make. And then, of course, sustainability, right? And as you're and sustainability is kind of thought about from two sides, right? You've got this immense amount of compute, right? I was talking to a colleague of mine whose previous job was to sell real estate, commercial real estate for data centers. And he said that the company that he used to work for, their phones are ringing off like the hook continuously because they cannot find enough space fast enough, right, for the immense amount of growth. And a lot of these hyperscalers are the primary buyers, right? They're buying immense amount of real estate to build these new data centers, and sustaining that, right? Sustaining that energy is one of the key areas that I believe the world is going to face, and they have to solve for, right? And that's also on the other side, I think, where AI can help, right? Ensuring, finding new ways to sustain energy is going to be one of the key areas that AI, I think, is going to be used and deployed in pretty significantly. And so in conclusion, the future of AI is tremendous promise, and as we said, challenges. By prioritizing your ethics, legal, and sustainability, we can harness the power of AI and create better, more sustainable world. Hopefully this was giving you guys a bit of a perspective that I think could be useful in your journey. And so with that, I thank you, and I look forward to discussions.
All right. So let me introduce you to a panel of experts. We have Prati Juneja. She's going to be moderating from DNB. We have joining Prati Anthony Dayton from Tamer, CEO of Tamer. And we have Rodney Cobb, head of worldwide sales for Data Fabric and governance at IBM. Please make your way to the stage.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the AI panel discussion today. My name is Prachi Juneja. I lead the analytic advisory for Dun & Bradstreet, and I'm honored to host this session today. We are at an incredibly exciting juncture in the world of data and technology today, where artificial intelligence is reshaping industries, transforming the way we work, we live, and we even think. All the way from healthcare to finance to education and entertainment, AI is driving innovation at an unprecedented pace. In one of his recent blogs, Bill Gates described AI to be as revolutionary as the mobile phones and the internet. And we all know how dependent and crucial those are for us today. But with all that potential comes a lot of questions. Important questions like, how do I get started? What are some of the pitfalls I need to watch for? We heard Gary just a little while ago really talk about some of the ethics and bias in AI that we all need to think about. I'm joined with two distinguished experts with me today who will help us navigate the complexities and the opportunities that AI presents. So without further ado, let's jump in and introduce our panelists. We have Anthony Dighton. Anthony is the CEO of Tamr. He is a Harvard graduate with over 20 years of experience in building and scaling enterprise software companies. At Tamr, he has led his team to build a modern AI-based approach to mastering data, allowing enterprises to convert their data into assets, enabling accelerated growth. He serves as an investor, advisor, board member to various startups around the world. We also have the pleasure of having Rodney Cobb, Global Head of Sales for Data Fabric and Governance at IBM. Rodney has over 24 years of experience in enterprise software and cloud services industry. Starting his career as a technology specialist, focusing on sales, Rodney has held various sales leadership roles through his career. And for the last 12 years, he has been focused on data and AI technologies. At IBM, Rodney is a distinguished leader in the IBM Worldwide Data Fabric sales team with a focused mission towards data intelligence technologies. Welcome, gentlemen, and thank you so much for your time today. To kick things off, I wanted to start by asking each of you, what excites you about AI right now? Anthony?
Sure. So excites is an interesting choice of words because I think there's a continuum of feelings people have about AI that go from it's a stochastic parrot, it's a fancy version of autocomplete, to we should be very worried about our future as a species, right? That's a pretty broad spectrum, right? That feels like maybe too broad. And maybe to anchor the panel, and at the risk of kicking off on an odd foot, I'm a little closer to we should be worried. And the reason is that, and so that's why the choice of the word excited is an interesting one. The pace of innovation and change in AI and the capabilities of models are increasing at a doubling or exponential rate. And you need only look at the data behind each of these models, how much compute or data is fed into these models. As everyone I'm sure is well aware, OpenAI raised $6.5 billion, I think yesterday. Why in the world does somebody need $6.5 billion, or not a person, a company needs $6.5 billion? Because we're going to be talking about models which cost $1 billion, $5 billion, $10 billion to train. So these are extraordinarily powerful pieces of technology. This is a scale business. And we're not talking about this happening, 10 years from now or 20 years from now. We're talking about this happening this year or next year. And one thing that's true about humans is we are extraordinarily bad at forecasting exponential processes. We just don't do it well. We're not, it's actually, I think, biological. We're not well designed to deal with these. We're very good at looking at things linearly, very poor at looking at things exponentially. So I'm excited. I'm also worried. And but I think there's a lot of potential we'll talk about this later, but a lot of potential for these technologies to make our lives better and remove a lot of boring and rote work that we do. But we'll talk about that.
Absolutely. Rodney?
Yes, I would say, I'm excited for a lot of reasons. I do share, Anthony's concern about some of the risks. However, I've got a good friend of mine that, has made the statement many times that, technology solves all problems, right? And so I think what excites me about it is in an open format, right? Like the Open AI Forum. And as long as, we can work in an open, a more collaborative way, I think technology will solve a lot of those challenges. And so I get excited about what AI will do at a more global scale in terms of, sustainable energy and, solving, the poverty, right? Issues in our world. So I think, there's a global aspect of it. And ultimately, I think, just the nature of working in an open and a more, kind of collaborative way, technology will solve, AI will solve those problems.
Yeah, yeah. And I think very well put. As I think about excitement for the potential that is ahead of us, but really the fear of how do we approach and utilize all that potential responsibly. And I think through the day we'll talk a lot about it. Anthony, as I looked at the recent interview that you did with United AI, you talked about how Tamar is using the AI first strategy in solving business problems across your customer base and, really mastering data at scale. Could you talk a little bit about a use case or an example where you've been able to implement it or drive the business results and what those would be?
Sure. So maybe step back a little bit. What does Tamar do? So we've been doing AI for more than 10 years now. And so, as I like to joke, we were doing it before it worked, literally. And Tamar comes out of academic research at MIT. And the project that was started by a series of grad students at MIT, in a way, was really simple. Asked a question, if I'm looking at data, if I give you two records, we'll use IBM since you're sitting next to me. I have a record that says IBM and I have a record that says International Business Machines. Anyone in this room would be like, that's the same company, right? That's pretty obvious. And so the question for the academics at MIT was, can we train a machine to do the same thing? Right? And as it turns out, 10 years ago, you can't, right? It doesn't work. So it took them a long time to get the tech to actually work. But fast forward to today, these models are getting much better. We've talked about this exponential growth, and it's getting much better. And so in a way, all Tamar is doing is applying the concepts of AI to the really boring task of improving the quality of enterprise data. And as I like to joke, our market is companies that have crappy data, right? And that's everybody. So it's a really hard problem. So let's talk about a specific example of one of these hard problems. And I'll use the example of Staples, the office supply company, which is a customer of D&B's and a customer of Tamar's. And in a way, they have a really simple problem. They got 20 million company accounts that are customers. These are businesses that buy from Staples. And that's across 11 plus different systems within that. And why do they have 11 different systems? Well, you have staples.com and you have Staples Retail. You also have Staples Corporate, like you actually have salespeople that go to corporate accounts, right? And each of those have their own systems. Even within that, there are multiple systems. And so this sounds like an easy problem, 20 million customers, a bunch of different sources. And by the way, they want to make sure that they have the best data about each of these accounts. So they want D&B data, they want DUNS data in that as well. But let's just think about the math problem that they're struggling with. If you take 20 million customers and you want to make sure that you have them collated across all of those underlying systems, what's the work you need to do? Well, you got to take the first record and compare it to the 19,999,999 other records in that database, right? Or across those systems. And that's if you just have one database. Let's do the simple case. And then you take the next record and you compare it against those, right? And I'll save you the trouble. The math here is that's n times n minus 1 over 2 comparisons that you need to do. Or in the case of Staples, 20 million records, that's 199 trillion comparisons that need to be done. And that would take a long time. In fact, if you spent 4 seconds doing each comparison, you only compared each record to the 200 other records that it most likely could be a match to, it would take you over 500 years to do, which is another way of saying it's impossible, okay? Which is largely why organizations give up on these types of problems. However, the good news is AI doesn't eat, sleep, it works weekends, it's highly parallelizable. And so now we can actually tackle this problem and look at all that data and bring it together. Mm-hmm. So there's tremendous business value, but it's really a question of going from impossible to possible. And by the way, 20 million is not the problem scale that Staples is dealing with. It's 200 million. Because they have data from D&B, they're looking at their what they call business universe, which is all the possible accounts that they could be working with. They want to be able to match the 20 million customers, absolutely. But they also want to know what's the white space, what's the business opportunity that Staples, what's an account that they haven't penetrated. And so that's an anti-match question. And so this is a question going from impossible to possible, which I think is an opportunity AI unlocks. And it unlocks a tremendous amount of business value because now they can have their account executives going after the right accounts. They're not marketing to an existing customer because they figured out this customer is already a customer, so they can go do the correct marketing and do upsell versus cross-sell versus new account target marketing. And they can understand their white space opportunity. Where are accounts they haven't penetrated, but they have an opportunity to go after? So tremendous value.
You know, Anthony, you went from impossible to possible, which is very exciting. And you touched on a couple of themes which were really interesting when I think about it. You talked about the low-hanging fruit, you know, the mundane. I want to match, I want to connect the records, which AI is making it possible because it doesn't sleep and it doesn't, you know, it works 24/7. And by the same token, the opportunity that it unlocks in terms of the white space, the increase in conversion rate, because now you are getting the right leads, the right time, and be able to really unlock that potential in the market. Tremendous value proposition for organizations to really embark on this journey. So wonderful to hear that. Rodney, if I turn my attention, AI is focused on, like, AI foundation is data and technology, right? When I look at the data fabric framework, IBM talks about how data fabric brings data, technology, people and processes into a unified framework, and AI is enabling that or driving that journey. In your experience, as you work across your customer base in various organizations, what are the trends you are seeing as AI driving and how that's really driving business value?
Yeah, so you know, some of the trends that we see, and I'll use a specific example recently that I ran across, but I think in general, you know, enterprises are challenged obviously with, you know, exploding amounts of data, especially unstructured data. You know, there are, with just in recent years, I mean, the explosion of tools and technologies, both commercial and open source in our industry, have escalated massively. So there's very, you know, complex, you know, technology environments within our organizations. You know, some of the other, you know, trends that we see and hear are related to, you know, challenges for data teams to make themselves more efficient, right? With generative AI technologies in place now, you know, they're being challenged to actually leverage, you know, Gen AI to be able to increase productivity and performance. And so, in fact, one of the state governments that I recently met with had shared with me that they have been given a mandate that any new technology or tool that they were to invest in must have some element of Gen AI along with it, right? And the thought and the goal was there to be able to improve and increase efficiency. So that's what we see in terms of trends. And I absolutely, think what really will move the needle and kind of, help all of our organizations is to start using, Gen AI technologies and embed it in the tools and processes that we use to create, curate, enrich metadata, right? To make it more, business ready for use and consumption in AI. And that's one of the key aspects that we see, that's prevalent in the industry.
That's when you talk about efficiency and optimization, really resonates tremendously. And I'm sure customers over here, it's also resonating. As I meet with customers day in, day out, one of the constant themes I have heard is doing more with less, right? Even looking at internally at DNB, I can't remember a time when I had enough resources to do everything done in a day, right? And when I think about that potential of optimization and efficiency that AI can drive in our day-to-day so that our teams can really focus on what matters and drive business, it's really interesting and something that really shows the potential that we have to look forward to. So let's flip the coin. We all understand that AI really presents this transformative potential for us to really embark on this journey. But let's flip the coin and think about what are some of the challenges that organizations are facing in adopting. Let's start with you, Anthony. And what are you seeing in the market, and how should we be approaching it?
Yeah, so I'll say something controversial, which is I think ChatGPT is the worst thing that ever happened to us as it relates to AI. And I'm a ChatGPT user, but why do I say that? Because it creates an anchor point for the value of AI as making a computer be good at human tasks. Right, so we all think what AI is good at is it makes it possible for the computer to do something I would reasonably have expected only a human could have done, and that is true. So I don't want to take anything away. That's true, but that's not what makes AI so exciting, and it's not the way anyone in this room should be thinking about adopting it inside your organization. Because I think the really exciting thing about AI is scale. It's the ability to do those human tasks, but more than you could if you reasonably expected to hire people to do that work, which is very much what you were just saying. Let me give you a slight thought experiment. I assume everyone here in the room is on LinkedIn, has a LinkedIn profile. If I wanted to write an email to Rodney and introduce myself and potentially connect with him in some way, send him an email, I could, as a human, go onto LinkedIn, look at his LinkedIn profile, think about who he is, where he's worked, what he's done, what he's interested in. There's a lot of great information on his great LinkedIn profile. And I'd write him that email. And that might take me 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I'm a reasonable person. I could also, what ChatGPT has taught me is that I could give ChatGPT Rodney's profile and have it write the email for me. And maybe that would take 10 seconds. That's pretty cool, right? That's an amazing improvement in productivity. But that's not what's exciting. The real potential is to get everybody's in this room's profile on LinkedIn and write every single one of you an email that looks like I spent 15 to 20 minutes writing you a personal, high-touch experience email that I want to have a personal interaction with you and do all of that in 5 or 10 seconds. That's game-changing. By the way, this is the room. We could do it to everyone in this hotel. We could do it to everyone in Chicago. And I don't have to hire a single human being to pull that off. I can just do it. And literally anyone in this room could do that today. So the opportunity with AI, and the way I would think about this in the context of your business is, where are you human capital constrained? Where are you thinking about doing work that you say, oh, I would love to do that, but we'd have to hire a big team and fill in the blank with your favorite low-cost development place. Think about those pieces of work that are impossible because you don't have the number of people you would need to do it, and do those. Don't think about this in the context of, well, I just want the computer to be more like a person. Don't think about it like ChatGPT. Think about it like parallelizing human tasks at scale. It's really a scale opportunity.
Interesting. Rodney, any thoughts?
Yeah, I guess just to add to Anthony's comments, I do agree about the, leveraging and using AI for scale. I think one of the one of the critical things that we have to evolve to is using and employing AI for efficiency and scale. But the trick is, infusing enterprise data, right? And efficient ways to leverage and employ our enterprise data, the data that has made us unique and leaders in our industry, exploiting that and infusing it into our applications, right? I mean, there's some statistics. I think less than 6% of all organizations have some production model out there, right? And then even more so, if you look at like how much private label data, right, our enterprise data, the data that we differentiate ourselves with or compete with, it's even less, right? So I think the trick is leveraging AI for scale and automation, much in the way that Anthony said, but then also, having more efficient and effective ways of incorporating and infusing the data that has made us unique and allowed us to compete and win in our industry, leveraging that more.
Yeah. And I think if I hear both of you talk, I think if I were to translate it in terms of the challenges that you guys are uncovering, is really the scope or opportunity AI presents is really enormous, right? So prioritization is key to kind of say, where are my immediate hits in terms of efficiency, optimization? Where is my heavy duty human capital being deployed, so that identify those areas, attack those in a step-by-step iterative manner? Would you agree? I mean, that's one of the core challenge, because the enormous scope, really, instead of boiling the ocean, how do I get started in a step-by-step manner? Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I mean, one simple way to think about it is look at your open headcount inside your organization and just sort what group has the largest open headcount that's got the highest hiring demands. There's probably a good AI project in there. I would also agree very much with Rodney here. The challenge with a lot of AI systems that are available publicly, they've been trained on public data, and we talked about OpenAI, but there's plenty of other ones as well, is that they only know about the public internet's data. And I would suggest one really big opportunity in the enterprise is to start thinking about these models in the context of the unique data that makes your business special and better. And this, I think, is a massive untapped opportunity. And it also puts a heavy spotlight on the quality of your data. The challenge in many enterprises is the data is a mess, and would benefit significantly from being brought together across silos, enriched with high quality data, clearly from D&B, and then now you have this really strong asset that you can then use in the context of a model to do highly personalized marketing, or really high touch customer service, or in many of these processes.
Yeah, and that brings us to how data is so crucial. Anthony, in one of our conversations, you had said AI is as good as the data going into it, right? And you talked about, bringing data into, as I think about challenges and prioritizing step by step, going into an area where it may be human capital invested, but I don't have the data to really optimize it, no point going there, right? So bringing it back to data, as a practitioner early on, I learned data is always nuanced. It's a lot of it. We are all overloaded with data right now. I saw in Tamar has used, and before I go to Tamar, it's like, data is nuanced. We need to focus on data quality. We need to focus on governance, but it's very expensive, right? I see Tamar has used AI to at scale and at an automated way handle data quality, data correct data abnormalities. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that has really helped organizations scale their data management practices?
Yeah, so the common wisdom before Tamar was that the way you solve data quality problems is you would hire people.
Mm-hmm. And that's why it was so expensive and
right, and
difficult to maintain.
And so people would focus their energy on only the thinnest layer of the most important data that was really, really critical. And like, this is where we can, it's worth it because it's so costly. And so, again, as I said at the beginning, in a way, all we're doing, all Tamar's doing, is applying AI to the boring task of managing data. And this is a perfect example of the sort of thing people shouldn't be doing. We shouldn't ask people to address standardization. Like, with all due respect, that is something that a computer is just much better at than a person. We can, I mean, if you're looking for ways to, bore people, go for it. But it's going to be expensive. It's probably not going to be very accurate, and you probably won't be able to do very much of it. So just apply AI to that task. That is a much better solution to the problem. If you want to, we do record matching. If you want to do address or a phone number validation, if you want to look data up in D&B and find all the rich enrichment columns you can add from a D&B record, don't ask a human to do that. It's just a waste of human capital. Better to ask AI to do that, and then unlock the potential that having higher quality data would actually have for your business.
Yeah, which can go at scale and really power the enterprise with that data-driven decisioning processes.
We've spent the last 10 years, and I work in the tech industry, obviously, but we've spent the last 10, 20 years in the tech industry, in the data and analytics space, on making it easier for people to create bar charts and line charts. And don't get me wrong, that's important. It's great. I love creating bar charts like the best of them. But we've forgotten the fact that most of the time when we create these beautiful dashboards, people look at them and they go, that's pretty and wrong. So could you just do that, but with all the data and make sure the data is actually accurate? That'd be better. And I think that's, the next 10 years of the data and analytics space is actually starting to work on improving the quality of enterprise data.
Well, and I think it's very interesting that you say that. I bet that the analyst was so focused, or the visualization resource was so focused on perfecting the visualization, that they really forgot or did not have the time to really look at, is the data really telling a story? Is it really accurate?
Well, what's more fun, to decide on the color for the bar chart, or fix the enterprise data? Like, yep. I know which one I'm focused on. Like that sounds creative and entertaining versus boring and mindless.
Absolutely, absolutely. Rodney, the AI has also propelled the growth of cloud services, right? And as I meet with organizations, there are two different phenomena I see. One, legacy systems don't by themselves lend to AI applications. And that is one of the reasons why cloud demand and cloud services has exponentially grown. But now there is a challenge in terms of data management across these hybrid cloud environments and legacy environments, and interoperating across these two. What have you seen, and how does IBM and in your experience, customers getting over using that data fabric methodology?
Yeah, sure. And it completely agree, right? Like just creating a cloud data warehouse, doesn't solve problems, right? In fact, it just creates, potentially one more silo. So I think what we see, and what is critical, is to be able to, offer and have, tools and capabilities that can truly operate hybrid cloud, right? And go across those environments. and be able to, one of the big things that we've been working on and delivering is in how to infuse AI to make some of the tools that we use to collect, organize, enrich data and metadata about the data so that can be more easily used and scalable, given all the scale concerns of, data continues to grow, use them to make data more business ready. So just if you take a quick example and we kind of look at things, from say a data producer's perspective, as well as a data consumer's perspective, right? So from a data producer perspective, if you think about just down to the very basics, right? Take a table of data, right? Oftentimes, column descriptions as an example are very, obtuse or irrelevant, right? It don't really fully describe the column of data, right? So the ability to use AI to just create more descriptive column names or descriptions about that column to allow and enable the data producer to be more efficient about how they, assemble and create data products is vital. And then from the data consumer perspective, leveraging and using AI to provide more intelligent ways to conversationally search and bring insights out of data so that it's more, directed and personalized to a consumer is vital as well. So I think those are some of the key things that, we see being really effective.
Got it. We talked about the potential of AI, some of the challenges. If we turn our attention to the future, a lot of our customers and organizations are embarking on this journey. So two-part question. One, any guiding principles in terms of how do they attack this massive scope of work? We talked about prioritization, but how do they get started on this journey? And the second part question, really in terms of what in the next 3 to 5 years, as we see AI grow, as we see new developments happen, what in the data management space is really something you are watching for, which will really have a significant impact in how we go after and manage our data on a day-to-day basis? Rodney, we'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. I think, when you look out in the next 3 to 5 years, I think you can look at it from two different perspectives, right? We've talked about the need and the critical, aspect of infusing enterprise data, right? Our private data, right? That makes us unique into these AI applications. So we've got to improve the efficiency of that. So one aspect of it is in just being able to, get your data house in order, right? Make sure that, as you're working, on perhaps, some preliminary or initial AI-based applications, having your private label data in a format, in a secure, high quality way that it can be infused into these models is critical. And then the other thing I see evolving and happening is in, there's some real reasons why it's been challenging to infuse enterprise data into these models because, the cost and scale, right? Like, so the options we have, prompt tuning, fine tuning models, there can be a cost to that, right? And so I think we will see more efficient and effective tools and techniques that will come along to help make that process more efficient. One I could speak to is, IBM just recently announced InstructLab, right? Which is a capability that actually allows for the enhancement and tuning and infusing of private enterprise data into a model without necessarily doing a lot of retraining or changing the core parameters of the model. So I think we'll see a lot more, techniques and tools out there that will make that process more efficient and effective for us to actually infuse our enterprise data into
something
these
to watch for
applications.
and utilize.
Yeah, so I would strongly agree here. The number one first task anyone in this room should be thinking about is getting your data house in order and thinking about the quality of your enterprise data. If you're going to be doing anything at scale, having high quality data, powering that is critical. And this is a very simple reason. If your data is junky and you do something at scale, you can do junky things at scale, and that's scary. So don't do that. Get it fixed first. You asked about the future. I think what we'll see in the future, one big opportunity in the data management space is what I call cross-entity relationships or linkages. We've talked a lot here about things like data about companies. We talked about data about people. We use the example of everyone in the room. I think the real opportunity is to think about linking those, in our language, linking those two entities, linking those two types of data, people and companies. That's exciting. We could also think about parts or products. So think about if you make a product, like what's the product I make? What's the parts that make up that product? What are the suppliers that supplied the parts that made the product that I sold to the customer, right? And when you start thinking about enterprise data, it's really not a set of different siloed sets of data, but it's really a network of data that drives and powers your business. And this has potential on the upside. So think about, you sell a product to a customer, what's the next best product you should sell, and then what are the parts that make up that product, and what suppliers make those parts, and that drives a supply chain question. There's also a risk side to it as well. If there's a defect in a part, what product did that go into? What customers did you sell that to? Right? So big opportunity when we think about, again, using our language, cross-entity linkages. I think that's a big future trend for everyone in the room to think about.
Fascinating, fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective and all that talk about AI unleashing that potential. Closing on a fun note, reminds me of all the sci-fi movies my kids make me watch. What's your favorite movie AI character, movie or books, AI character that comes to mind as you think about AI and the future it brings to us?
Well, where's the Marvel fans in the room? I'll go with Iron Man in his incredible suit.
I hate to be dark, but the Terminator Skynet analogy is maybe I shouldn't say this, but that's the thing I worry about. So favorite is not the right word, but I do think it's something as a society we should be very thoughtful about, and something that I think is going to hit the radar sooner than we realize. So
I suppress all the scary AI movie characters. So, but thank you so much, gentlemen. Gurpinder, I think we don't have much time to turn it over to the audience. But guys, Anthony and Rodney are here for the rest of the day. So any questions or anything that we can help with, thank you so much for participating, and thank you so much for your time today.
So we're going to have a customer case study, which is going to be facilitated by Larry Cox, our leader of advisory services. And we have Peter Herr, global leader, enterprise data from IBM. And the case study is going to showcase how AI was used to enhance entity resolution capabilities at IBM. So Peter and Larry, please join me on stage.
So I came in and was hearing about Skynet and the machines taking over. And I want you to know, we have huddle meetings every day. And in the middle of July, somebody goes, "Do you know what today is?" I go, "What?" He goes, "It's the day the machines woke up." So in the movie, we had passed that date. It's just interesting.
The other interesting thing is we were actually having the Skynet conversation this morning over breakfast. So very appropriate. Well, thank you all for joining the fireside chat with IBM. Today, we're going to talk about what we think is a best demonstrated practice in data management. I'm Larry Cox. I lead one of our advisory services team and have responsibility for IBM. I am joined by Peter Herr, and I'm going to turn it over to Peter for a short introduction. And then Peter, please go ahead and talk while we're doing it about IBM's focus and how your role plays into that focus.
Sure. Thanks, Larry. I really appreciate it. So let me start with IBM. I mean, everybody knows IBM. You've heard of our CEO and chairman, Arvind Krishna, and his focus on hybrid cloud, data, and AI. That's where we're going with everything. He said that from an earnings perspective, we want year-over-year revenue growth, mid-single digits, and more importantly, we're focused on free cash flow. And this year, we've agreed to reach $12 billion in free cash flow. So from an Arvind's perspective, underneath the covers, everything comes down to productivity. How do we make productivity happen, not only for our clients and delight them, but in IBM, what are we doing to make things more productive? Because when we go to our clients, we want to be able to say, hey, look, we've lived this story. We're eating our own cooking, right? So that's one perspective. The other piece is we're aggressively working to get new clients. And to do that, we need to do determinations of what a new client is. You know, how do you consider somebody a new client? If they're part of another hierarchy and another organization, are they really a new client or not a new client? So we're very focused on that as well. So for myself and for others who are the internal systems of IBM, we have to make sure our systems are running clean. And for myself specifically, I own customer master data, which is core for all of that to happen. And we need to have our data as precise as possible so that any determinations, you've heard the story, AI is only as good as the data it sits on. So we need to make sure that data is as effective as possible and is as accurate, standardized, structured. Those hierarchies are at the best they can possibly be. So my teams handle the day in and day out problems around our customer data. They handle those structures, making sure they're accurate. And because of that, it really gets exciting, some of the things we can do within our chief data office. We've been able to build platforms now where we can integrate all of our data across our enterprise and build insights on top of that, to where we're really living the dream of, you know how you go into a meeting and somebody pulls up a spreadsheet or pulls up a PowerPoint slide, and they look at those slides and say, hey, here's our numbers. And someone else comes in and says, here's my spreadsheet and PowerPoint slides. And you're going, wait a minute, these numbers don't match. Well, at IBM, we now have something called the Enterprise Performance Management System, which is really using all that integrated data. And we built dashboards. Any user within IBM can build their own self-created dashboard, but they're using data real time and being able to look at that. So we're now having executives going into meetings using our stuff, a single trusted source, which is, again, I'll go back to where we started a little bit, but I'm probably getting ahead of myself here, but this is the excitement that we're driving within IBM now.
You know, let's actually roll back a little bit and spend a little time talking about some of the problems you were trying to solve and some of the challenge you faced.
Yeah. So if you look about 2.5 years ago, we were sitting and working with, D&B, and we were hitting a match rate across our data in the low 80s, which isn't bad, not a bad match rate. But because of what we wanted to do and where we knew we wanted to go, we realized that match rate wasn't going to help. It really wasn't going to be what we needed. And we were also hitting problems around things, right? So we were very siloed in the way we dealt with matching in D&B. Procurement or supplier side had their list of customers and how they matched. From our standpoint in the quote to cash customer area, we had our way of matching, and the way we matched a customer and the way they matched a customer could have been different. Hierarchies could have been different, and nothing was aligning. So that was a frustration. Sales, we had frustrations where sellers, we all know a seller is trying to make a sale, so they're putting whatever information they can in upfront. Very frustrating because you get a company like JP Morgan Chase. Someone may call it JP Morgan Chase. The next guy calls it JP Morgan. Next person calls it JPMC, and it just iterates like that. And so we weren't hitting all those matches the way we could. Either sellers were getting confused and frustrating and coming to us and saying, I've got 8 different permutations of this customer. Which one should I be choosing to move forward with? And and then on top of that, we were trying to keep up to date with things. Obviously, this type of data changes over time. It doesn't sit still. Companies merge, companies get acquired, they divest, some companies go out of business. How would we keep up with that? And just to give you a sense of the size of our base, today we have about 1.7, 1.8 million active customer locations we're dealing with. So it isn't small. We have a much larger customer base than that, but we really focus our energy on clients we've done business with in the last 4 years. And so that was what we were trying to work with D&B. And we would try to do something called regression matching. I don't know if everybody's ever heard of this, but it is, data changes over time. So can we take our 1.7 million records and push that through and actually get, results back? And the problem was processing time was so slow for us at that point. We were trying to do regression once every 6 months. And if you wait 6 months for changes, it becomes a nightmare when they come through. So we had to reconcile everything. That was very frustrating as well. And then lastly, I would say from a match rules perspective, we were looking at confidence codes coming back from D&B. We were looking at match grades. And while those were helpful, we knew we could do things better, or we felt we could do things better, and we were getting frustrated with that. So at that point, we kind of stepped back and said, how do we do this better? How do we make this something that can be really effective? And we set an audacious goal. We got together and we said, we're going to hit 95%. Now, we had no idea how we would ever hit 95% matching, or if we could even hit 95%. But to us, that was one of the things we really wanted to fix, along with some of the other pain points that I mentioned. And we really wanted to drive that matching up. The other key for us was we knew that this couldn't be done alone just by IBM doing things. This had to be a joint venture between us, a partnership between us and Dun & Bradstreet, so that we could get there together, because we were going to lean on them for a lot of what we wanted to do.
Great. Now let's talk about the fun part, Peter. How did we resolve some of these issues and get where we are today? I'll let you start.
All right. Yeah, because I'm sure you have input on that too. So I want you to weigh in. To me, when from our side, when I looked at it, I think two main themes come out, right? One of those themes was, how do we improve the technology? How do we get there doing some things on our side? So, for example, and I think we got a picture up there for you, but one of the things we decided is, how I was talking about that siloed problem? How do we resolve that? So the way we resolved it is we built a main area where all of our different sources would tie into. And that main area was what we would use for match, so that we knew the results coming back in that area was what everybody across the board in IBM would do. And that would eliminate a lot of those discrepancies. The other thing that it allowed us to do, because we had that main source area, we were able to accelerate on our side, I should say, somewhat, because if, let's say, suppliers sent in a customer and it's, I don't know, Pete's Pet Shop, right? And we did a match on that with D&B. If from another area, marketing came in with Pete's Pet Shop at that same location, we didn't even need to go to D&B. We knew what that DUNS match was, right? So that was one of our technology enhancements. Another one of the technology enhancements that we really worked on was what we talked about with accelerating how we do matching. So that pain point of pushing 1.7 million records over and every 6 months and waiting time, we knew we had to fix that. So that was another, from a technology standpoint, that was another thing. The other area I would list under technology is probably definitely the matching area. how do we match better? How do we not get frustrated with some of the matching we're coming back? What are some of the tools we could use? And that is where we leaned on D&B and their expertise to help us with that. So that was the technology side. To me, the other side that was absolutely critical to make this happen was what we call the stewardship side. And that meant Dun & Bradstreet, IBM, coming to the table and looking at things that weren't matching the way we wanted to. And we really broke this down. We took it on a country by country basis so that we could understand the nuances of a given country. As an example, France, we weren't matching as well as we wanted to, and we wanted to drive that match rate up. Well, when we dug down, France, on all their customers, they have something called national ID. Some of you may have heard of it. We had that data, but we weren't pushing it over on the match, right? So once we realized that in talking with D&B at the table and going, wait a minute, we can fix some of this, we started pushing national ID and immediately saw a 12-point jump in our matching levels in France. In some of our ASEAN countries, they have multiple tax IDs. And we were only looking at one. We carry multiple, but we were only looking at one. We were able to talk to D&B again and say, hey, we have all these. And they were able to tweak some of their match rules to make us more effective. So being able to work through from a technology standpoint and a stewardship standpoint, Larry, I think was really key for us. The other thing I will add is we really wanted to automate this end to end. No hands involved. Let's get it fully automated so that we don't have to deal with any fallouts there. So, and I know you've seen some stuff from your side, but those were my high level thoughts.
Yeah. When IBM told us about the 95% match rate, that's aggressive. And we knew at that point that we had to design a solution that included automation, people, and technology. So I have a very talented team that consists of solution architects, data advisors, and data stewards that work very closely with IBM. And we developed a 3-phased approach that anchored on our AI and ML driven MDM platform, sandwiched between automation and professional services. That was key for us moving forward. The first phase of that was match optimization. And the match optimization is a service provided by our data advisory team. And the output of that service is data-driven analysis that allows us to set benchmarks and auto acceptance criteria for our automated matching process. This is critical for one huge reason: data variability. One size does not fit all in the data world. This phase allowed us to move from 82 to 88%. The second phase was technology. We deployed D&B Connect Manage, which is our AI and ML driven MDM platform. And we anchored on 3 aspects that it does. One was workflow automation, clustering, matched and unmatched records, and integration of multiple data sources. The thing that became apparent from this phase was the clustering of unmatched records bled into the data stewardship phase. And the reason why that's so important is it allowed the data to be organized such that there were manageable chunks of data for the data stewards to work through. They weren't just like trying to arbitrarily pick groups. So that was very important. This phase allowed us to move from 88 to 92%. And that's for a company of this size, for any company, those are incredible match rates. The third phase was data stewardship. And we have 2 dedicated data stewards working on IBM. They're employing alternative techniques. They are doing line-by-line reviews of data to resolve unmatched records. This is really important because when we're getting to this type of match rate, we're actually measuring at the tenths of a percent at this point in time. And a tenth of a percent on the data set's a couple of thousand records. So I would get reports on a daily basis on this is how we're doing, because we were really pushing to get to that 95%. We hit 95%, I think it was June. Today, we're sitting at 95.25%. And that's absolutely incredible. The overwhelming positive results, I think, lead us to believe this is probably a best demonstrated practice in data management.
I can tell you from our side, it definitely is.
Can you talk about some of the benefits?
Yeah, sure. And let me touch on one of the big things on our side that Larry mentioned is this clustering, being able to see like entities together that DMB has given us. That was a real big win for us. If I talk to my technical guys, they consistently point back to that as a key portion of this. But yeah, when we're looking at the win overall and the benefits, I would just tell you, first of all, right, having that 95% match on a DMB side allows us to drive incredible accuracy in our customer data. And right now we are stable at about a 99% accuracy in our customer records. And we can stand by that week to week, month to month. We can also keep up to date with stuff as we were mentioning that regression piece and that improvement that we did there. We're now regressing on a weekly basis and full 1.7 million records. Send it over, send it all back to us matched in about 3 to 4 hours, which if you're going back and looking 2 years ago, we couldn't do 10,000 in an hour. So the huge leap there. But going back to the AI thought process, and AI is only as good as the data it sits on. We now have as a core component, because we're driving off our customer base, we have that high level of accuracy. And I can talk about a ton of areas it impacts us, but let me just hit on a couple. One is government-owned entities. We're very risk averse in IBM. We don't, if we're going to be doing business with a government entity, we want to know right up front that that's a government entity. And being able to match and have that trusted hierarchy. And by the way, DMB is our trusted hierarchy in IBM. Once we have that, we can go up and down the scale of the hierarchy and figure out if we have a government-owned or a state-owned entity. We use that data, and we have several other key things we look at. But we were able to increase our determination of a government-owned entity by 20 points. We're at 97% of our customers. We know whether they're a government-owned entity or not, which means you got a small amount. Yeah, we still have a small amount there, but that's something we can hand off to our trust and compliance teams and they can work through. So that's one big piece. Another big piece is our sales teams. As I mentioned before, our sales teams were having problems determining, I try a customer name. Is this the right name or not the right name? Being able to match allows them to drive to that one entity. And we're even using a front Direct Plus to help drive that a little bit as well. So when a seller picks something up front, they know what site that they're dealing with. It's in a drop down for them. They're able to run with it. And on our sales side, in the past, because of all the different things and matching challenges we had, we would guarantee that we would have your customer information correct within 24 hours. We're not there anymore. we guarantee 4 hours, but for most, I would say pretty much most of the records we get, we're done within minutes. We know exactly where we are. We know exactly how we're matching. In some of our financial credit risk areas, where they have to understand how a customer sits, for them to go figure out things, we've accelerated in that area. They have about a 50% touchless rate now because of this work that we've done and built the foundation. You know, and in the key area that I was talking about earlier is really an exciting area for us because of this matching and what we have. We're really able to build a platform. We now have a platform that brings together all different sources, easy for us to tie and integrate them together and allow folks to see financial dashboards, to see, you know, to see opportunity sales data. There's all sorts of endless things we can do now because of that. And you can see some of the things. I'm trying to look at what we listed on the slide here. In ISC, they were IBM Sales Cloud. We're able to allow sellers, like I said, to see things right up front, to understand what they're matching with. We can do data analytics so much easier. We have that single source of truth across IBM, across the enterprise, around our customers, that we no longer have to go looking for. And this has really helped us. And it's helped in my space. Now, let me go personal on it. In my space, my team, we've been able to reduce the team over the last several years by about 60% that maintains that and use those folks in other key areas. So in that free cash flow, that to loop back to the beginning, the free cash flow that Arvind was talking about, using it to invest in other areas of research, we've now you know, from a productivity standpoint, reduced ourselves down. So we're burning less, and he's able to use that money elsewhere. We're able to realign resources to where IBM wants to grow. And if I were to put a dollar on it, I probably say we've saved somewhere around $2 million in the last couple of years through doing all this. So that's really the beauty of this story from our perspective, and how it really has helped us, and it continues to help us. Our journey continues on, not only in this space, but because we built that stable base, we're now able to do a lot of other things in our you know, view going forward.
So our teams just met, and there were some pretty exciting outcomes for the future. Why don't you spend a few minutes talking about you know, some of those outcomes?
Yeah, definitely. So, and that was a really good meeting. And I will tell you one other thing on the stewardship front, as sort of an outcome of that meeting, was this morning, even before this session, our folks who manage customer data met with a group from Dun & Bradstreet, had a phone call where they got together and talked about how can Dun & Bradstreet effectively help our folks so that they are making the right determinations on data, or say a match falls out, small amount, but if it falls out, when they look at that, how can they effectively attack that? And Dun & Bradstreet was there to help us work through and talk through how that would work. So that's another great stewardship thing. But I asked my team, I said, okay, you had the meeting, right? If you had to mention two things that really excite you about where we're going forward, what would they be? And the answer was, one is what I think we're calling it mirroring. I may have the term wrong, but it's really resolving that issue today. To find out about changes, we have to push our data to Dun & Bradstreet. They match and it comes back, right? So that's a 3 to 4 hour time. We do it once a week. Mirroring means when Dun & Bradstreet knows how to change, they're going to let us know. So we can really now, not pseudo real time, we can react in real time. And that really excited our team because of what what we can do again.
And that's
coming
moving,
out.
and that's moving toward, a concept of data streaming and such. That's kind of hot in the industry right now. So I know there was a lot of excitement that came out from our team as well on that.
Yep. And then the second piece I think that our team is excited about is, and you could probably explain it better than me, Larry, it's what they call multi-pass. And that's where if you're pushing a customer name doesn't exactly match at the level we want, you could use a trade name. You can use multiple addresses, and it'll keep trying and trying till it finds that match level we want. I think I've described that again.
It's very
at
good.
my level. Yeah.
Yeah, no, multiple permutations, multiple passes, logic that allows you to figure out, what the best match is from those permutations. That's really something exciting that we're, looking at implementing. And also, utilizing some newer data sources maybe that has less latency. So that's something we're also looking at that came out of that meeting that was very exciting for the team as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Today we send maybe 5 data sources through, and we're looking to get close to doubling that in the next 6 to 12 to 18 months. So that's another piece. And by the way, Dun & Bradstreet doesn't know the source we're sending. They're just seeing it as data, which really is nice on our side because we can control that.
I think we're up on time, Peter.
All right.
We are right at 11:30. Peter, thank you very much for a very informative, exciting presentation.
So we're gonna kick things back on again, and right now we have Nathan Bruce here with me. He leads our product data management product team, and he is going to share with us some of the things that we have done over the last year or so with respect to some of the data management products and capability enhancements. So Nathan?
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Good. All right. I'm excited to be here in Chicago. Sorry. I ran into Abe Froman last night at the restaurant. Anyway, sorry that fell flat. No. Chicagoland. All right. Thanks everyone for the attention. I'm going to give a demo of the D&B Connect product suite. This is our flagship data management SaaS product. So I know a lot of folks in the room use some of our existing products. Some folks use D&B Connect already. Some folks use our batch, match and enrich products. You get kind of our full files, integration manager. So these are all the products that are on in my portfolio. And what I'm showing here is really kind of the future of data management at D&B. I'm going to walk through a scenario, sales marketing scenario, kind of pretend like I have a company, we sell services into hotels. I'm going to use some hotel chain data. It's really nice data because you have a lot of branches. They all roll up to, parent company. So it's kind of a nice data set to give a demo on. But you could very easily sort of replicate the same scenario for, say, like a supplier use case where you have a vendor management system or something like that. So I promise only 2 slides and then I'll give a demo. This is just kind of setting up the scenario. It was funny, I did not talk to Anthony from Tamer earlier, but he pretty much described the exact same thing I'm going to show here, but he used staples and I'm using hotels. So I guess you can see it in action, which is pretty cool. So in this scenario, let's say, I have data about my customers and prospects in my CRM. I have my current customers in my accounting system, and I have a marketing system with a lot of contacts, kind of a mix of business contacts, maybe personal emails in the public domain. But my goal is to prepare the data to then enable it through a marketing campaign where you can build a lookalike on our most successful customers and then replicate that in the marketing campaign. I'm not going to focus on the marketing. It's all about the data preparation. But for those of you that are in marketing, those marketing systems have a lot of AI. So this is all about preparing the data to be able to be valuable as an input to AI. But what you'll find, actually, there's a lot of AI, and I'm using AI as like a umbrella term, data science-y things that go into preparing the data for it to be used in AI. And I'm sure a lot of you experience the same situation where you have these different systems, they all have information about your customers or prospects, but it's different information, right? So in your CRM, you may have your account name, some physical addresses, email addresses, but then in your accounting system, you may have kind of like an official registered name of the company. You may have their billing address, which is different than their physical address. You're going to have some tax IDs, like gentleman from IBM was talking about. And then your contacts are not necessarily going to be who you're trying to sell into. It's more of who's paying the bills, right? The accounts payable contacts. And then in your marketing system, you just got a bunch of data, right? Just contacts that you've gotten from, that you've purchased, that you've scraped. It's from all over the place. But the goal is to join it all together to have one nice source of truth. Here's a bit of a diagram of what the D&B Connect software does and what I'll give a demo of. You start with your data from your various systems, and you load it into D&B Connect Discover modules where we start. And the three main functions that Discover does is it cleanses that raw input data. And I have little AI labels where we are actually using AI or machine learning or something similar under the hood. So we're cleansing it, and then we are matching it to unique identifiers, and then we're enriching it with data from say a third party that's trusted, that maybe like Dun & Bradstreet. You take that data out of Discover, it's all nice and clean. Now we push it into what we call Connect Manage, and this is where we really get into some heavy machine learning. And this is actually what Anthony was describing earlier, where you could spend 4 minutes, right, going record by record, and it would take however many 100 years. So this is actually where we're applying that, and you'll kind of see that in action. Once it's clustered, now you have what we call golden records. So you have company information from these three systems. So you have at least 3 records for every company. And a lot of times there's even more duplication within those. We're consolidating those down to a single entity or single row of data, call it a golden record for each company. Then we can do some stewarding on top of that. And this speaks to the IBM conversation. It's really kind of getting that last mile after the machine learning has kind of done its automation. And then lastly, publishing it. So in this scenario, we would be publishing it to our marketing system to run that campaign. But it's really just about, now we've done all this work to really curate mastered clean data. It's all about then taking the next best step, right? Pushing that back into your system, whatever that may be. And this is what I will demo. And it's a live demo, so let's cross our fingers. So I'm going to start in D&B Connect Discover, and actually just walk you through a quick little scenario of this. Here's a look at, I'm not going to load all the data. I'm just going to show like one example. Let's say this was the data that I extracted from my CRM. I'm sure everybody in the back can read this. But I have kind of an identifier from my source, and then I have company information. I have 2 different company names. I have address information, URL. I have some contacts in here. So I'm going to load this up and I'm going to match it. Sorry. So let's call this my demo for marketing. And I can see the types of, I can see it, you can't see it. Don't touch the wire. All right, you can see the different data that you subscribe to. So in this case, I subscribe to finance and sales and marketing. I'm going to use the sales and marketing data in this case. What I'm doing is I'm setting up my project, and then I'm going to load the information into it. I can choose between company matching, contact matching. Contact matching is actually a combination of both contacts and companies. For the demo, I'll go through company matching. I can attempt to zoom in. That's about the best I can do. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to take my CRM file and I'll load that into Connect. And it's going to give me a little preview of the data just to make sure this is what I expected. Yes, it is. So I'll confirm this upload. this is my CRM data. Okay. The next step is to map it. So I want to map my input data to what Connect is expecting in order to do its matching. So you can see we have all these different inputs that we can map to. We can map to multiple company names. And also just a heads up, some of you, we're actually, a lot of you are getting a preview to some things that we actually haven't released to the market yet. So this is kind of latest and greatest, hot off the presses functionality in here. Phone, it auto maps what it can. So it mapped address, city, state, zip, country. So now I've done my mapping, I'll move on. And at this point, I've taken my raw input data, I've mapped it in, and now I'm going to choose my matching approach. We have a couple options in Connect. We have kind of the easy match, which is kind of like just do it for me, do the best you can for me. Or we have more of a manual traditional approach where you can actually get in and kind of fine tune the match settings down to confidence codes, match grade strings, if people are familiar with these terms. For the demo, I'm going to do the easy match here. And I only have to make two decisions. So what am I going to prioritize? Just standard, which is kind of like I'm looking at all the data with about the same weight of importance. Or if I know I'm kind of heavy on names and addresses, I can prioritize that. Or if I'm heavy on national IDs, I can prioritize those. It really kind of depends on your data profile. Because I have a mix from all different systems, I'm going to start with standard, and I can always come back and rerun it. And then for my stewardship rules, how strict do I want to be on matches that I would automatically accept? Again, I can be very strict or least strict. I'm actually going to go least strict because since I'm going to load this up into Connect Manage, there's a whole nother round of essentially matching. So I just want to get as much data in there as I can. So I'm going to go with least strict. Little confirmation. And now I can choose what I want to append. So what's kind of happening behind the scenes here is that raw data has been loaded. It's been cleansed to kind of clean up dirty data. It's been matched to a DUNS number. And now that I have a DUNS number, I can append any of the other sort of data blocks or data products that I've subscribed to. I'm just going to use a template. Let's just pick master data basic. And I can preview it, and here's kind of a list of all of the information that would be appended. And at this point, if I wanted to, I could actually go in. You can see it's a little hard to read. These are all the individual data blocks. So like company financials, company information, and I could go in and pick and choose my own elements if I would like to do that. Again, just a confirmation, and I will complete my setup, and it will kick off and run. And kind of like a baking show, I've already baked the cake, it's in the oven. So I'm just going to go here and show you what it looks like after, let's say I had done that for all of my data sets, my CRM, my accounting, and my marketing data sets. It's all under this one hotel marketing campaign project. So I can see a bit of statistics about the types of elements that I mapped, and how that matched kind of the match rate. So I just out of the box, I had a 78% match rate, which is decent, but we're gonna get higher as I move on. You can see it break down by how the confidence of those matches and how many are unique or duplicate. And then also down into contacts, because I had contact data in there, you can see how many of those contacts matched. And this is fairly common where contact data may not always be the greatest quality, so it matches a little lower. And then I didn't show this in the setup, but you could also send, because it's an email marketing campaign, I want to verify those emails and make sure that they're going to get to who I'm trying to send them to, and that I'm not going to get flagged for spamming or anything like that. I could have chosen to send those contacts for email verification. You see kind of a dummy dashboard, but it would show me kind of the breakdown of the quality of those emails and how many of those would be deliverable, kind of the breakdown between business emails versus consumer emails. And then I could filter out the junk right before I blast out that email campaign. Don't want to get blacklisted. And then down here, you can see the individual sources. So I have the information drilled down into this for just that CRM file, just the accounting file, and then just the marketing file. Here is And again, this is actually just in beta, so we haven't even released this. It looks a little raw, but I do want to show you this is what's happening behind the scenes, and this will be launched into Connect this coming year. We're actually using machine learning here, and it's using machine learning to clean up your input data to get out all the junk that you may have in your addresses, all the junk that you may have in your names. A lot of from your CRM, you have reps hand keying accounts, fat fingering things. So this is to clean up and standardize all that so that you're going to get a higher match rate as you go through the workflow. This is showing me the before and after. So I started out with a 22% quality score of data, and I came out with a 42%. So about doubled the quality of it. Seriously? Let's hope it comes back up. Okay. So if I jump back to this, what I just took you through was this first step, the cleanse, match, and enrich. I could stop here. I have a nice clean output from my CRM and from my accounting and from my marketing, and I could push the data back into those systems. But what I want to do is I want to combine it, right? So that I have a single golden record for every company. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my D&B Connect Manage software for that. So this is D&B Connect Manage, and it takes a little bit to set it up the very first time. So I went ahead and did that. You can see I have my hotel marketing campaign project here, and I ran the data through it this morning. So what I really want to do is just kind of show you the outcome, show you the results of that. But all I did is just load the data and let the machine do the thing it does. And what it's doing is it's going through all of my data from those 3 different sources. It is finding the duplicates, records that it believes are the same company, and it combines those. And you can see, I think it shows some statistics up here, right? So I started out with about almost 17,000 raw input records, and it found that that's actually 10,000 unique entities. And these are hotel data. So what that means is it's about 10,000 individual locations of hotels that I could market to. What I'm looking at here is these are the list of individual golden records. You can kind of see, it shows you the source record. So you can see how many it combined, how many raw records it combined to get to the golden record. So let's see some of these. Hyatt, right? We're at Hyatt. Okay, Hyatt Hotels, 98. So it found 98 records that actually belong to just the same. This is probably the headquarters location of Hyatt. And if I drill in, you could see it took those, what was it, 78 or 98 records, and it consolidated into a golden record, and it took the best data from all those different records and combined it, and it created one clean set of data about this company. And I can now take this nice clean set and I can push it back or push it into my marketing system. And I have all of the data that I need about this company. I want to show a couple other things in here. Apologize, the Wi-Fi is going a little slow. So this is just taking the data, loading it, letting the machine learning do its out of the box thing, trying to profile the data and create my golden records. But there's always a lot more. Kind of that next step is the stewardship. So it's a fun name, Crotched Mountain Ski and Ride. So they must have a hotel there as well. So here's my golden record for this. See, it's Vail Resorts, right? So yeah, this is a location of Vail Resorts. If I wanted to see what went into building this golden record, I can go into the cluster details, and it looks like there were about 6 records from those 3 different systems. I'm going to make you dizzy scrolling here for a second. Here, okay, yeah, cool. So here we can start to see where this came from. You could see different data was pulled from those different systems, and it was all combined to create this final golden record. You can see there's different formats of addresses. Some have a second address, some don't. And this is very typical when you're pulling data from multiple different systems. But it took these 6 records and it used machine learning to collapse it into that golden record. if I wanted to override anything, this is where your data stewards can come in and they can check things. I could actually go in and override a value if I wanted to, because what I'm doing here, this is my master set of data. This is the source of truth that I'm going to use to drive the rest of my business off of. So this is where I could come in and make updates. If I wanted to, I could push it back to CRM, accounting, and marketing and update those systems as well. Then the last thing that I would do now that it's curated is I would push it to wherever I need to push it to. So I could go to my connections and I could open up a new connection. And we have some out of the box, so I could push it to, if I have my data hosted in BigQuery, Google Cloud Share, Amazon S3, Snowflake, or ADL S2. I could push my data back to those, or I could just download it as a file, right? If I wanted to download it and push it into some other system. So that is the end-to-end flow of this.
So now we have Aaron Rozek. He's going to join us and he's going to showcase some of the AI related products that we have been working on. So Aaron.
Here we go. All right. Here we go. All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Aaron Rozek. I am the product lead for Dun & Bradstreet's enterprise generative AI capabilities. We've talked a lot today about the utilization of generative AI. We talked about creating those efficiencies, the ability to do more with less. I want to show you a couple of those capabilities that we've created at Dun & Bradstreet in the generative AI space. The tools that I will show you are geared to do just that for customers. Save those times, create those efficiencies in workflows and processes that allow our users to be able to do more with less. I'm going to start within our Hoovers application. I'm going to show you a couple of use cases within the sales and marketing space. I'll start by showing you a demo of our Smart Search AI tool. The concept of this is that a customer wants to come in and build a list of prospects. Now, this is certainly something that they could do today, but with generative AI, you can do it much faster. Today, when a customer wants to go in and build a list of prospects, they go in and click a series of filters, they build a list, they refine, they go. With the Smart Search AI tool, you can simply type in a natural language what you're trying to do. So I'll start with a query here about accounting firms, which are headquartered in the United States. What this will do is this will immediately go into our database and we'll start pulling these results back. Now you can see I'm pulling this back in near real time. I get about 600 results back. I want to filter this down a little bit more. Let's look at those that are low risk and let's see, growing. So now, as you can see, I'm able to then dive deeper and deeper into this data simply by asking questions. So I now were able to immediately reduce that down into 251. Still a little bit long for me. So let's go ahead and let's refine it a little bit more. So I'm going to ask it to show me just those that are 10 or more employees. So let's go ahead and run this query. You start to see that ability for this to be able to save that time for customers. Instead of going through and clicking a bunch of filters and selecting those and finding employees, being able to ask these questions just as they pop up into my mind allows me to be able to construct these queries much, much faster. But how do I make this actionable? I have now a list of prospects, but now I want to be able to start that process of being able to outreach to those prospective clients. So let me ask it to show me those CROs and CMOs for these companies. So now I go from looking up a number of companies to starting to drill down to the contacts. So you can see for these, I was able to find 9 results just right out of the gate of contacts that I could reach out to from these entities. These businesses meet my criteria that I was able to build here within 2 minutes. Now, all of a sudden, I can get a hold of the contacts for these. This will transition me into my next demo. So we looked at Smart Search AI. Next, I'd like to show you Smart Mail AI. So this is where we take that list and we start to do something with it. Let's say as a user, I want to reach out to these agencies. Well, today I would go ahead and I would key up an email. I would find relevant information to be able to pull that in. With Smart Mail AI, generative AI does that heavy lifting so that I can really expedite this process. So what this tool will do, this will construct an email outreach that I could send to this client. Now, this immediately gives me some bare bones information that I could easily copy and send out. But with this tool, we also provide the ability to really configure and start to add more personalization to this email itself. So I could go in and tell information about myself, about what my company does. I could also do things like change the length of the email. I could change the tone of the email. And I can even look for relevant news sources. So in this case, I have an array of articles that I can fold into this as well. I'll go ahead and grab one of these. And simply by clicking the regenerate button, I all of a sudden am able to refresh and create a brand new email, which I can send out to those users. Now, the way that this will work for our customers, this tool, as well as the Smart Search AI, is available to nearly every Hoover's user free of charge. It does use a contact credit when you create this email, but you could go through and regenerate this over and over and over and over, and it won't cost any additional credits. This is a tool that we think will help customers to be able to really save that time so they can focus on the things that matter most with the customers, connecting with them and interfacing with them. Now, with this, I have an email all geared up. I could open this in an email. I could copy the text. I could do whatever I need to do to be able to facilitate this email going to the customer. Now, with this and with generative AI in general, I think it's important to be able to know that even though this is doing most of the heavy lifting, it's still important for those customers to be able to add those personalization touches. So when I think about this as an email, I think about this as a really, really solid start, a big framework that allows you to be able to go really fast. When I put this into Outlook, or if I were to send this out, I would add those finishing touches. But as you can see, the SmartMail AI tool has done most of that heavy lifting that allows me to be able to focus on those things that really matter the most and add the most value. I want to transition now. We looked at a sales and marketing use case. I want to show you next our Chat D&B capability. Our Chat D&B capability has a much more broad use case scenario. With the sales and marketing tools that I've looked at so far, you're building prospects list, you're outreaching to customers. Chat D&B is done in Bradstreet's generative AI conversational Gen AI tool. What we've done with this tool is we've enabled a large language model to be able to access our various data blocks. So now customers can run use cases in the risk scenario, supply, compliance, sales and marketing. All of our data becomes available within this tool to query with natural language. Let me show you how it works. I'm going to run a query here about firmographics information. Now you can see I didn't have to give it too much. Give me firmographic information about this DUNS ID. Now what you see is the system in near real time is able to then prompt into our data blocks to be able to go and fetch this information. Now, a key aspect here is that we have not trained this large language model on our data. Instead, what we've enabled is an inference process whereby we've allowed this large language model access to certain data blocks, and it has the ability to go and fetch this information in real time. So we still protect our data, but we allow for this ability for our data to be used within a large language model. Let me keep going on this. So I started with a question on firmographics. I'll move over to risk. So I can simply have a conversational interaction with this capability. I don't need to re-put in the DUNS ID. I don't need to re-put in the name of the entity. I can simply act as though I'm talking to an agent. The system will know what I'm trying to ask. It will go in and start bringing me all of this information back. Now, one of the things that we've seen with this tool so far is that it's very verbose. It wants to tell me all kinds of information about every question that I ask with this. But because of the nature of large language models, me as the user, I'm in control in terms of how I want to interact with this capability. So for me, this is still going. This is a little too long for me. When this one finishes up, I can simply ask the system to summarize. So now all of a sudden, I'm in control in terms of how I consume that output. Now, I could have even started this demo by saying, give me only short answers or give me only the most complex answers. All of those things that you can do today with a large language model in terms of how you interact with those capability are available within this tool as well. So live demo, of course, it takes longer. But nonetheless, you can see it will immediately start giving me summarization information on whether or not this company is risky to do business with. Now, as this one finishes up, I want to run one more. So one of the things that we've heard time and time again from our clients is that because of the breadth of the data that we have, it's often very hard to understand the contextual nature of some of those fields. So not only have we enabled these capabilities with access to our data, We've also enabled an array of documents that are customer facing that help customers to better understand our products, our services, and what we do. So I can simply ask the system a question: how is failure score calculated? Now, instead of a user going and contacting a rep or accessing a data dictionary or looking through documents, all of a sudden they can use a tool like this and be able to get that information immediately. Now, you can see from this, it will gather up all the information around how that score is calculated. In some cases, it'll tell you the score ranges. It gives you all of that information instantaneously. Again, I don't have to contact a representative. I don't have to go and reference a document. I simply ask a question here, and immediately the system starts returning those responses to me. Now, because of the nature of these type of capabilities and because of the newness on it, we know that the responsibility is on Dun & Bradstreet to help prove that this output is of high quality. One of the ways that we've done this with this application is we've enabled it to be able to show its work. So for every question and response that it provides, it will also provide the lineage of how it responded to that answer. So in this case, I asked a question about failure score. This will give me all of the documents that it utilized to be able to fetch that response. It'll tell me how relevant it thinks that is to my response. It'll give me the page number, and it'll also tell me a blurb about that particular document. It will do that for every document that it utilized to be able to fetch that response from. So you can see here, 6+ documents that it went to go and fetch that information for me. This is where you start to see the time savings aspects of this. I didn't have to go to another repository. I didn't have to go through 6, 8, 10 different documents, read all of those, understand and consume those. The system did all of that for me. Now, this is early days for us with regards to Chat D&B. When we release this to the market, it'll have 2 core capabilities: chat with D&B data and chat with documents. These are the things that I've showed so far. But as we continue to progress here, we will add more and more functions into this capability that will continue to allow it to do more and more interesting things and serve broader and larger use cases.
Thanks so much, Gurpinder, and thanks to everyone for being here with us today and for the opportunity for me to talk to you about ethics and governance. Who's excited about that? Who's telling the truth? Okay, just checking. So how many of you, when we think about ethics, think, well, I have absolutely no idea what that means? Is it about being moral? Who thinks they know exactly what ethics means in the context of AI or otherwise? Gurpinder, yay. Anybody feel like they really, anybody study philosophy in college? Yeah? Okay. Okay. So oftentimes people think ethics is the same as moral philosophy, and we won't get into all of that. I'm going to try to talk with you a bit today about ethics through a practical lens and not the part that oftentimes historically people in roles like mine have thought about, which is correct behavior, behavioral ethics, business ethics. I mean, this is in that domain, but it's different. And in the context of AI, one of the things that people have been struggling with over the past few years is, how do we even think about ethics? And a lot of people have actually tossed the word aside and said, it's too squishy for me. There's a well-known author and leader in the space who wrote a book. His name is Reed Blackman. And he said, yeah, most people don't like ethics because they think it's squishy. My goal, when we're done in the next half hour, is to help you feel like it's not a squishy concept. It's actually very concrete and practical. And it's not overly legalistic and a whole bunch of principles, but more just things you can think about in practice as you're considering the opportunities associated with AI. So that's our goal. We're going to talk a little bit about governance too. And one of the things I will get to on the next slide is about the importance of governance around AI. And so just by show of hands to get started, does anyone feel like they have mastered governance for AI in their organizations? 0. Okay. And why? Because it's hard. And why is it hard though? Part of why I think it's hard, and I'll get into this a little bit more as I go through the slides, but part of why I think it's hard is AI does not stand alone. We're introducing models and systems into an existing ecosystem and an existing infrastructure and an existing way of doing business. And this adds new risk. But does it really add a lot of new risk, or is it just a lot of hype? Does it really add a lot of opportunity? I would say yes. And how great is that opportunity versus the risk? Is it really as concerning as some people say it is? How many people think AI is risky? How many people think AI is not risky? How many think, it's somewhere in between? Me, somewhere in between. And I think part of it is it's the unknown, it's the uncertainty, it's the grappling with the amazing things that data scientists and technologists are doing. I attended a conference last week and they were talking about some of the most leading concepts around AI. And I thought, wow, okay, I need to read some new papers because I thought I was up on this and I think I'm up on it, but it's constantly changing. And that in and of itself makes it hard to think about governance effectively. But in order to get us started, I really wanted to just share a little bit of numbers to get us thinking about things. And I'm not really good at just standing at a podium, so I'll take this. Okay, better. Just to get us started, one of the things that organizations were surveyed on last year, and there's a lot more surveys all around that people are doing, but in terms of adopting AI, 86% of organizations said that having some form of AI guidelines, and this was a year ago, was indispensable. I have not found an updated version of this particular survey, but I guarantee it's gone up because more and more people are recognizing that to deploy AI effectively, there's a lot that needs to happen, and we need to think about that in a responsible way. In a survey that actually was just completed by Deloitte last month, actually it was in August, 51% of organizations that responded to their particular survey said that they have a governance framework in place. Now, a governance framework doesn't mean that we do governance well yet. It may mean we have some people who gather around who are figuring things out. And I would purport that that's a lot of what's happening in organizations. I actually spend a lot of time in meetings with people who do AI governance, responsible AI, people who have had certifications. And I promise you, everybody is still figuring it out. But we're making a lot of progress, and that's the really good news. And in fact, in this same survey by Deloitte, 23% of organizations said that they felt highly prepared. And I would say, from my perspective at Dun & Bradstreet, and one of the things I'm excited to share with you today is I feel that we are one of those organizations that we are highly prepared, and we're figuring it out as we go, of course, because there's new things changing every day. But I'm excited to share some of that with you. In terms of one of the things that I think is most important to start with is that it really comes down to trust. But what does trust mean? That's a big high-level term. One of the things that we feel at Dun & Bradstreet we have thought about so well over many, many years is how to prepare and provide and continue to deliver trusted data. And one of the things we'll talk about more as we talk about AI and AI governance and AI ethics and responsible AI, all of those terms in my mind really fit together, is that trusted data is at the heart of the future of AI and the success of AI. And we can have the most amazing technology in the world, but if we don't have good data going in, we're not going to get good data coming out. And if we don't have good data going in, that we understand what that data is, we're not really able to understand how the models are working. People talk about this black box and hallucinations and all those things I'm not throwing up there on the slides today. But why are those things a problem? Oftentimes because nobody knows what's happening with the data. And so one of the things we're going to get into a bit more is that much of AI governance is moving towards data-centric governance and really starting with the quality of the data and the understanding of the data. And I know a lot of what you've already spoken about this morning is the importance of master data management and the importance of the kind of data that you're able to put into the systems, that you're able to allow to be called upon when the AI model or AI systems are actually running. That's a really critical part of it. So bear that in mind. But Before we get started, I thought I'd just give you an eyesore. People in roles like mine, I'm a lawyer by training. I actually prefer being referred to as a scientist. That's where I started my career. And that's what I think is most fun. And it's actually why I love this space so much, because it blends the legal issues, like we'll talk about in a moment, with ethical concerns. And really at the core, it's all about the science and it's about the data. But one of the things that's happening right now is that people are worried about the regulatory environment. Now, some people will say, there aren't any AI laws. Well, that's not wrong. It's not true. In fact, as of last June, there were no 2023. There were no AI specific laws, but that changed last summer. Does anybody know the first AI specific law to be adopted in the world? Does anybody care? Probably not, right? All right, I care. I care. Why? Because one of the things that happens when we move beyond what's the right thing to do to specific legal requirements is it creates more liability, more responsibility. It changes who says what in contracts and all of that ends up taking a lot more time and a lot more process. So the first country in the world, for the record, that adopted an AI specific law was not the EU. EU is not a country anyway, but it was China. China. Mm-hmm. Do you know what else China does very quickly? They adopt new laws. They decide they're adopting a law, and within the next week, usually they adopt a law. In fact, there's a couple of laws up there. Their data security law, their personal data protection law, and their generative AI measures. They adopted all of those laws within a matter of weeks because that's how things get done in China. By way of contrast, the EU proposed a very thoughtful EU AI Act in 2021. And on August 2nd of this year, they finally, after many, many turns, lots of input, lots of deliberation, have come out with the most prescriptive law in the world right now for AI, the EU AI Act. And it comes into effect in terms of all of its requirements over the next couple of years. So if you're hearing, oh, I need to be worried about the EU AI Act, we all do to an extent. However, the most important thing, and I know you talked about this already this morning, is be transparent, because most of what all of us do will be largely outside the scope of that, unless, of course, you're using AI in the context of making employment decisions. Most of the things that are considered high risk that require a very specific set of obligations under that act won't apply to much of what we do. But we can get into that further if necessary. The thing that I really wanted to point out here, because this is not a legal talk, and plus law stuff can be really boring for people who don't do law all day. Those of us who do law all day think it's kind of really interesting, but that's besides the point. The only thing I wanted to make a point to you about is that a lot of people have said there isn't really a lot of AI regulation yet, so we can do what we want, right? Wrong. Why? Because much of how all of this works is with data. And data, believe it or not, well, I think we all sort of are realizing this at this point, data is becoming increasingly regulated. So while the AI laws have been developing slowly, just creeping along. California, Governor Newsom actually signed 4 into law just a couple of days ago. So yes, California will be pushing things like the EU and like China. But the other thing that's been happening is increasing regulation of data. And one of the things that's been so interesting to me in my 3 years so far at Dun & Bradstreet is learning about the fact that a lot of personal data regulation, so you hear acronyms thrown around like GDPR and CCPA. Everybody hear those acronyms? Yep, we all throw them around. They regulate data about businesses. Anybody know that? They do. And they regulate data about businesses in the context of sole proprietors, which are actually the majority of the businesses in the world. So important to bear in mind, because data about sole proprietors is regulated under laws like GDPR and like most of the other ones up there in just the same way that data about us in our personal context, in our households, is regulated. And so that's really important to bear in mind. So what we're seeing, don't worry about anything other than there is regulation. It's mostly about the data, and it's probably going to stay more about the data. But there's this confluence of now AI being regulated. And what's really interesting about that is, for the most part, technology itself hasn't historically been regulated. It's the data, and more in regulated industries, but it's now, this is the first kind of broadly used technology that's being broadly regulated. So what do we need to worry about, and how does this relate to governance and ethics? So first of all, one of the things I always try to say to my colleagues is, don't worry about all the laws. Do not, it's too much information, even to my team. Do not worry about every last nuance of every law. It's too much to worry about. We need to think about, what are the commonalities across all of those different laws, but where do they come from, and what are we really striving for? So for us, we like to think of this through the lens of what we call our ethical North Star. And our ethical North Star is grounded in concepts like regulation, but risk. What is the risk? And what's different about regulation in this space, and much more, I mentioned I started my career as a scientist. I was actually in the life sciences industry for 2 decades. And one of the things that was really interesting to me in that space, working with data from biomedical research, clinical research, where we were really looking at impact to people, is for the first time when we're thinking about risk outside of specific industry sectors, we're now thinking about risk to whom, not just our businesses, but to whom in terms of people, to whom in terms of the planet, to society more broadly. And so when we think about risk, what's happening, what's shifting because of these legal concerns and the broader policy concerns, is we need to think about risk in a more holistic way. And there's a few different ways that one can go after that. One can use an enterprise risk management method. And a lot of what's happening in organizations now is to relook at the enterprise risk management model and whether it does account for risks and harms beyond the scope of the organization itself, but to clients, to society, to the planet. This is much of where sustainability is coming in. But so setting those two things aside, what I really want to focus on in the remainder of my time, which hopefully I didn't use up already, because I want to get into the things that you can take away, are 2 core things that I think help frame this in a very practical way, or at least that's my hope. You can challenge me and say, nope, not good enough. I need it to be more practical. But if we start with responsibility, and then we go to resilience, in my view, those 2 key ideas are really the aspects of ethics that I think can help us bring this to life in the context of what's really happening in our organization. So my goal on the next 2 slides is to help us think about that together. First, responsibility, and second, resilience. And why? Because ethics, the kind of ethics that I like to think about, is really about how are we appropriately responsible to all the parties, that's the legal word, all the people, all of the entities, all of the various things out there that could be adversely impacted. And how do we think about that in a way when we design what we want to do, when we're working to actually put it into practice? But even if we thought carefully about who we're responsible to or for, part of the problem is this. AI is changing all the time. Tech is changing all the time. Data is being generated all the time. There's new synthetic data that's being generated. I think that's pretty exciting, like creating all this new data just to help the models. There is so much that's changing. And so even if we get it right today, it doesn't mean it's going to work next year. I was saying to Gurpinder when we were chatting right before I got up here to talk to you, when I talked about this stuff a year ago, it was so different versus where it is now. And we're really seeing that one of the key things we need to remember is it's not just about now, it's about how well it's going to work into the future and how well it's going to evolve. So to help us think about that, these are the core things I wanted to focus in on. And I use the balancing because to me, one of the things that's so helpful when I think about ethics and what it can really mean through the lens of responsibility is how do you balance all those different interests? You're never going to get it perfectly right. And there's always subjectivity involved. But if you at least think about who are all the different people, the different parts of our planet, the different communities, the different businesses that might be affected, and you look at them together, on balance, did we get it right? Because if it's too tipped in one direction or the other, that's not going to prove out if something goes wrong, that we actually acted responsibly. So now we're going to get into the heart of it. So when we think about responsibility, it's just a general word. It can mean anything. I want to talk about what it means in the context of AI. So first, we talked about transparency this morning. I'm actually going to talk about transparency last. I want to start with models. Here's the thing about models. There's a lot of them. A lot of them. And there's going to be more tomorrow. And the ones that we used last week aren't as good as the ones that are going to come out. And some of you in this room know this very well. And so knowing the model and knowing what it was designed for, the trustworthiness and the credibility of who you're procuring it from, whether it's actually going to use your data in a way that potentially could be harmful, or whether it's been trained on data that actually was rightfully available to the people who created that model. Those are all things that are really important. So one of the things that we do in our governance approach, so by the way, I will just quickly say, at Dun & Bradstreet, we have an AI governance council. We dubbed it Agile AI Governance Council because one of the core things is we're not allowed to slow things down. That's really important. We want to be fluid, agile, move with our business as it develops. But one of the first things we do is we look at models. So around our business, whenever we want to do something new, we think about, is that a model that's already been approved? And has it been approved broadly for various different use cases? If so, proceed, and we talk about then what the new use case is. And I find in talking with people in other organizations as well who do what I do and what my team does is looking firstly at the model is important. One of the things people throw around is the acronym LLM, large language models, lots of large language models. One of the things that's happening more recently is people are refocusing on small language models. Interesting, huh? Why? Anybody know why? Yes, expense, because the large language models require a lot of computing power and they have massive amounts of parameters, which mean that they likely can do a lot more. But does your use case require that? And if it doesn't, why on earth would you waste money, cost, time, etc., on using something that does not require that same capacity or capability? So models. Now the data. I love data, so I want to spend a little time talking about data. We have to think about data in a few different ways in the AI context. So firstly, it's going back to the model. What data was the model trained on? What data was the model tuned on? Tuning means that oftentimes you'll take an existing model and tune it and make sure it's working more for the specific use case that you're interested in. And knowing that is very important, but oftentimes the way AI systems are structured, you'll be pulling in through retrieval augmented generation, or otherwise known as RAG, you'll be pulling other data in. Then that will be used in the AI system itself. So we've got the model and the data it was trained on. You've got the model coming in on the side in the system. So the AI system and the model are not one and the same. The system is bigger. So you may have multiple models working together that have been trained on different data. But then as you're using it to help make different decisions and look for different outputs, there's oftentimes data you're feeding in that's used for inference. All of that data taken together is a really important part of the consideration set, because if you don't have, I'll go back to my point earlier, if you don't have trusted high quality data and know that data, then you can't actually know whether it's going to deliver the kind of results that you're looking for. The next thing that's really important is provenance. And we could talk about data lineage and traceability. Provenance is a nice broad way of thinking about, do you know the source? Where did that data come from? What many places did that data come from? If it came from different sources, are you able to label it in such a way that you can actually know the different places it came from? And there's different ways of approaching labeling. Supervised machine learning, for example, many of you may be well aware, does require good data labeling. One of the things we're hearing more from data scientists around the world is that one of the biggest problems, if you will, from a more model-focused approach to AI governance is it's not focused enough on the importance of the data and the importance of properly labeling that data, because that's key to accuracy. That's key to the quality of the model and how it operates. So model, system, data, provenance. Now, let's get into, I threw all those laws up there. Why do we care about them? Two reasons. One is certain of them regulate what kind of data can be used for different purposes. So if data is identifiable of any one of you in this room, depending on where you're from, but for the most part, we'll just assume that the 20 laws in the US actually extend to most all of you. That data is regulated, which means there's a whole lot of responsibilities that flow through it. So if the data can be used without it being identifiable of you, you substitute in some kind of a pseudonym or a code, that actually can be very beneficial to making sure that you're limiting the risk and the potential things that can go wrong. So an important thing, just kind of tying all these pieces that we've talked about so far back together, is think about your use case. Do you really need to know who the people are? Do you really need to know when you're training or when you're developing something? Do you really need to know the names of the specific businesses? Maybe you do. And if you do, there's ways to deal with that. But if you don't, it actually is a good thing to try to remove those identifiers because it limits some of the risk. And then focusing in on the use cases. What are all the things that are relevant to that specific use case? Because every use case is different, which means which model works, how it's constructed in a system of various models and data and other tech working together, what data you're pulling in, all of that matters. So really knowing this in the design as you're getting ready for deployment. And the other two things that are critical at this stage of designing and deploying effectively in a well-governed, thoughtful, responsible way, cybersecurity and transparency. So let's talk about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, we all know how important that is for businesses as a whole these days. There's a lot of increased liability and responsibility for publicly traded companies in the event of a cybersecurity incident, and there's much increasing regulation. But why is it so important? Because it can be completely disruptive to our businesses, harmful. I mean, look at what happens when there's a data breach, and all of our data, for many of us, has been affected by multiple data breaches. Data's out there on the dark web, and it can be used actually for identity theft, fraud, all kinds of things that go wrong. So making sure that these models are appropriately secured and are designed in such a way that they don't allow for things like prompt injection, if you've heard of that term before, and making sure that the teams that do cybersecurity are trained well on doing red teaming. That's a kind of term of art if you haven't heard of it before, where there's a lot of safety testing that's going on to make sure that the models are actually able to work in a way that's not going to cause harm from a cybersecurity perspective. And lastly, on this slide, and I want to move on to my last one, is transparency. So how do we think about transparency in the context of building and designing an AI system? People are really struggling with this right now. So I just want to say a few key things. One is it's important to think about the model. But if the model's part of a system, it's actually much more important to think about the system and being able to explain to people this system has these models, was trained on this data for these intended uses, not for these other uses, like to actually scope that out and make sure people know what it was designed for so it's not mishandled. And then making sure, very importantly, as we go to my last slide here, as we're thinking about the future, I'm actually going to start more at 11 o'clock there and work back. So making sure that the model was designed in a way, excuse me, for ongoing resilient purposes in a way that respects people's rights, because they have a lot of them, as do businesses, and people who are concerned about intellectual property and copyright protection and otherwise, we need to make sure that those transparency documents, whether it's for the system or for the data itself, are very clear on how people can raise concerns about their rights and exercise those rights effectively. So making sure that that's well designed and readily available to users of the system is very, very important. It's what we're seeing more of. There's not a lot of prescriptive models for it yet, but what we're seeing more from a trend perspective is AI model cards, AI systems cards, and data sheets. And in the privacy community, which is another community that I'm a part of, we're starting to look at how existing privacy policies need to be updated. I personally think it's way too complicated, so it's important to start thinking about how do you bring all of those things together. But lastly, just as we're closing out here, and I know I'm running out of time, so I just want to share a few last points about maintaining model resilience. And that is, when you design the model and the system for whatever AI use case you've conceived of, it's very important to think about, is this going to be robust enough to serve and scale for many, many more customers over time, or many, many more users over time? When you allow different kinds of users in the real world to throw more data in and more queries, is it going to remain reliable? You heard from Aaron and the team about explainability. Obviously, as things get more complicated, as it scales, you need to make sure you're remaining focused on the clarity of explainability. And then most importantly, it needs to remain adaptive and responsive over time. So I will leave you with that. There's so much more. Happy to take any questions if we have a moment or two. But otherwise, thank you so much for your time. And hopefully you take away some practical insights from our conversation.
All right. So with that, we have another very, very engaging and interesting panel discussion coming up around data quality challenges. Well, it's for me, it's very interesting because, data quality, as we just heard from every single speaker today, it is the backbone for AI to work. So we have some great experts with us today that are going to shed some more light and share experiences and their thoughts on how to go about that. So let me introduce the panel to you. So today we have with us Isabel Gomez. She is our Chief Revenue Officer at Dun & Bradstreet. We have Sunita Menon. She is Global Enterprise Data Ambassador at KPMG. We have Malcolm Hawker. He is the CDO and strategist at Prophecy Software. And we have Ed King, who's joining us from OpenPrize as the CEO for OpenPrize. Welcome once again, everyone. And there's some water bottles I've left next to your chairs if you need. And Isabel, over to you.
Thank you. This is on?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. And everybody else has.
Check,
That was
check,
fantastic, by the way. I have a couple of questions for you, Hilary, but we'll take it after we finish the panel because we're going to be talking about data quality, data challenges, and there's a lot of connections with some of the comments that you just made. But good afternoon, everyone. How are the energy levels so far? Good? Is this the last? Yes, yes.
More coffee.
So first of all, it's a privilege to be here with all of you today. For those who don't know me, my name is Isabel Gomez Vidal. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Dun & Bradstreet. I've been in the data and analytics business and industry for the last 30 years. And there is no single day, I can tell you, either internally or externally, that I don't have a conversation that relates to AI, data, technology, business outcome, achieving efficiencies, right? It's what we're living every day ourselves and with our teams. And so our next conversation, we've talked a lot about data, we talked about technology, but we're going to double down on data and the art of possible when we have trusted and verifiable data and the things that we can achieve. But what are the challenges when something goes wrong? Right? When the data that we thought had the quality that we were expecting is not there. And so with that, we have an incredible panel with me that they're going to be doing all the talking. But I know they're very, very passionate about this. And so let me start with Sunita Menon. And Sunita is a global data strategist and advisor who has taken a holistic approach for data-driven business transformation. I know you've done a lot of transformation in the last 30 years of your career across India and the US. Currently, you have a very important role at KPMG as a data governance global role for KPMG International. And you are enabling a portfolio of data analytics, AI use cases, and empowering KPMG professionals to think, speak, act with data and insights. And I love that. So I want to know more about that in a minute. We'll talk. With me today is also Malcolm Hooker. Malcolm, welcome. And Malcolm is the Chief Data Officer of a software company called Prophecy. You've been for a lot of time in the industry as a Gartner analyst, and I know you're very, very passionate. Have worked with many companies and global enterprise around data, around master data, governance, data quality. So I know you have a lot of opinions in what we're about. Way too many?
I have plenty.
Plenty. Okay, you guys ready for that? And last on list is Ed King, is the founder and CEO of OpenPrice, a no-code RevOps data automation platform that really helps enterprises, customers solve data quality and integration and automation. And I know, Ed, you're very passionate and you are really mission driven when it comes to helping others with powerful software to really manage volumes and volumes of data in the right way. So I'm looking forward to our conversation. So with that, let's get going. And we heard this morning and during today from Tamer, the CEO of Tamer. He talks a lot about the rapid change and pace of innovation in the new AI evolution and journey. We also heard from our colleagues in IBM. They talked a lot about how technologies can solve anything. Some of you agree, some of you disagree. We'll see with the panel. But they also talked about how they've been able to leverage trusted and verifiable data to actually achieve 95% matching rate. That's incredible. So on that note, I want to start with you, Sanita. And in thinking about data and data quality, and when you think about your global role across different geographies and regions, what are the different type of data challenges that you can find? Are they different depending on the region? And how do you go about it and solve those?
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. Yeah, when it comes to different regions and countries, the challenges are around the varying levels of infrastructure, governance, and process. You know, when we say infrastructure, you know, most of them have legacy systems, and therefore their formats are different, their definition is different, the vocabulary is different, data language is different. And in some cases, the understanding and awareness of value of data is different as you go from region to region, country to country. Understanding, getting the resources, budget, it all varies. The environments are different. But in terms of tackling those challenges, you know, first of all, there has to be, I think, that what has helped is we are not telling a business story when we talk about data. We're talking technology, and we're not talking about how does this help you? If you have bad data quality, so what? We're not telling that story. We're not starting, and that helps to tackle the challenge. Another one is, you know, we're not going down to the principles of data quality management. Are we talking about how does, you know, 20% of your data is driving 80% of your analytics? Have you fixed that 20% first? So there are some underlying principles where we have to ground our work in that. We have to talk about, you know, certified sources. There are lots of sources, you know, it all comes about. So there's integration challenges and trust challenges, and it all comes back to, do we trust this data? We talked about, you know, Peter talked about, you know, everybody comes with their reports, and then, you know, where did you get this report from? Whose number is correct? So it goes back to do we have certified sources that everybody is looking at, you know? And there's a joke that says, at least if we are wrong, we are consistently wrong, right? So at least we have the same wrong answer. But that seriously, it's about, do we have that are we tackling this in the right way? So I would say that those are some of the ways to tackle the global.
Thank you, Sanita. And I see Malcolm was nodding all the way when you were like very passionate, say, yeah, I fully agree, but I'm just interested to hear a little bit more and double down on what are the impact from a business perspective. If you think about functions such as sales, marketing, operations, when you think about data as foundational in your data strategy and the data that we're using is not verifiable, it's not certified, it's not trusted. What happened?
How much time do we have?
Ooh, well.
I mean, there's no shortage of, nightmare stories about poor data quality. I could go on, and one end of the spectrum is Enron. I mean, that was a $60 billion company that went bankrupt and took thousands of jobs and a lot of retirement portfolios down with it. That's at one end of the spectrum. That was a lack of governance and poor data quality to how revenue was recognized. I mean, there's the recent Air Canada case you may be familiar with about the chatbot giving the wrong bereavement policy because some old file was dangling on a SharePoint server that nobody had updated or nobody even cared about. I mean, you see the data quality impacts every day when you probably go to the mailbox. I mean, I get 3 flyers from GMC every time I go to the mailbox, right? And I haven't owned a GM in like 10 years. Like, why, right? Inefficient marketing spends, lack of insight, inability to digitally transform, like Sunita was talking about. I mean, everybody wants to digitally transform. Everybody wants to be in the AI era, but there's some simple things that are just getting in our way. I mean, the list is incredibly long, but Sunita, is why I was nodding like so much is that the truth remains, guys, the business doesn't care about data quality. Sorry, it just doesn't. It cares about business results. So as data practitioners, we need to tell the story in a way that the business cares about. We need to articulate these risks in a way that a chief risk officer would articulate them, or a marketing leader would measure campaign effectiveness. Right? That's how we need to be communicating these things, not about necessarily about whether we have too many duplicates, which I'm passionate about. I can talk about duplicates all day long if you want, but finding a way to tell the story the right way.
Thank you. Ed, any comments, given the comments from Malcolm and Sanita? Just interesting to hear, how do you address that? Right?
Yeah, so the funniest thing about technology is that almost every time you talk about technology problems, the root cause is not technology, it's people, it's organization. So biggest problem we see with organization when it comes to data quality is that they don't have clear ownership, right? Most companies, they fall in the whole spectrum, either absolutely just have no policy, no governance, don't know who owns what. The other extreme is too rigid, right? People have just completely tried to do top-down, lock the master data management, which becomes so rigid that the business started to go around it, right? So that's probably the biggest problem we see, that if you're serious to address data quality issues, you have to start looking at your organization, at the company, who owns what, right? What's the right model for your company, right? Does a very rigid top-down master data management scheme work for you? Or do you have to be more of we're highly advocate what we call a delegated, decentralized model, right? Again, also different departments may need different things, right? For example, finance, probably you can be a little more rigid, right? But on sales marketing side, that will kill you.
Yes.
Right. So you have to have the right model for the right company, for the right group. If you don't have that right, what happens is that basically, at the worst part, people just go off, do their own things, right? A lot of you guys are DMB customers, so you understand data enrichment. So we see companies that have 5, 6, 7 data vendors. At the worst, they throw all that into the CRM, your sales rep logs in, there's 10 panels. Right, there's 10 phone numbers, 6 emails. They don't know what's what, right? On the other extreme, literally we've seen cases where people just implement their own things. You actually have race conditions, right? One system update a piece of data, 2 minutes later it gets overridden by another system. Just complete lack of governance. Again, it's not a technology problem. It's lack of organization, lack of ownership.
So people, organizational structure, having a North Star, right, and clarity of direction. So as we think about data quality and the issues, how do you think about the potential use of AI to actually enhance data quality? And let me just go to you first.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, AI can do probably a lot of things, and probably half the things it can do, we haven't even discovered. So, at least for today, right? What have we seen people can leverage AI today in a way that at least can stay away from a lot of the more touchy governance ethics issues, right? Probably the biggest area AI is ready today in terms of data quality is how it can enable you to deal with unstructured data, right? For the most part, most companies do a decent job, good enough job with structured data. Unstructured data is very difficult. Unless you have just a kick-ass IT team that has built out some kind of NLP, natural language-based technology you can leverage from, you're sitting on a ton of unstructured data you can't leverage. And what's also parallel has happened with AI is that we are generating so much unstructured data right now. Every business call is now being recorded, being transcribed, right? People fill out surveys, support cases. There's so much unstructured data sitting out there that companies can take advantage of. So AI, the most immediate thing we see when it comes to data quality is to help you with three things. One, it can help you clean up, do data quality actually on unstructured data. A very simple example in the sales and marketing world is job titles. Okay, so we all seeing how bad job title can be. People can't spell, trust me, they just can't spell. And also, if you're in the Bay Area like I am, people get very creative about job titles, right? Data ninjas, growth hackers, yes. What the hell are those, right? So be able to clean up that data is one. Second thing is actually be able to extract structured data from unstructured data. Give you an example. One of our customers, they sell to restaurant chains. So constantly they would like to have updated data on how many storefronts does Subway has, how many storefronts does Burger King have. Now you can go Google that information anytime. You'll get a pretty accurate data back. The problem is Google gives you back a blurb. How do you, the blurb can be say, oh, Subway has say 3,000 restaurants in California, 8,000 in the United States. Which number do you pull out of there, right? You need to understand language. The third thing is actually classification. So being able to take unstructured data and understand what's actually in that data and label it, classify so it's useful. One very simple example on the sales and marketing side is engagement data, right? So sure, we capture all the email exchange that your seller has with a prospect, but what's in that email? If you don't know what's in that email, you don't know what the content is, and you do say an attribution analysis, then email is an email. That email may be, hey, can we postpone the meeting till tomorrow? That's not an engagement, right? But being able to read that engagement data and use AI to say, can you classify this engagement into one of these 5 different categories? So now you can eliminate out of office, reschedule meetings, all the stuff that's not real. You can actually drop about 80–90% of a lot of these kind of engagement data set. That will make everything else work better.
So helping you structuring and structuring data, classifications, and some of the ideas that you mentioned. Malcolm, interesting to hear any story that you could share with the audience around a moment where you were able or somebody else was able to overcome a data quality challenge through a very innovative approach. Anything that you could think of?
Yeah, I'll think back to my days at Gartner. I'll put my Gartner hat on. Had the opportunity to speak to no fewer than 1,500 companies about this stuff all day, every day. So, which was just an incredible blessing. I saw a lot of bad things, and then I saw a few very, very good things. When it comes to the application of AI, what some of the forward-leaning companies that I was talking to when I was an analyst and continue to talk to now as a CDO are leveraging AIs. I just said that. They're leveraging the AIs. They're leveraging AI in their data management practices to recognize some of the things that we always have known are true, but we've had a hard time dealing with. The biggest one being is that data quality is contextually bound, right? Truth is contextually bound, right? What is true to marketing may not necessarily be true to finance, and they're both right. How many times have you had conversations with people in your organization where we're squabbling around the definition of a customer, right? Newsflash, they're both right. Because data quality exists at 3 levels in an organization: functional, cross-functional, enterprise-wide, right? And what really, really forward-leaning companies are doing and how they're leveraging AI is to acknowledge the fact that both three things can be right at the same time. Everybody can be right because context matters. What is right or fit for purpose for one use case may be different for another use case. And AI is really good at understanding context. So what we need to get to and where we need to evolve and what some companies are actually doing and doing successfully in the data quality realm is acknowledging that instead of having one set of rules to rule them all, what Ed called the rigid top-down approach to MDM, being an MDM guy is like, wait a minute, I'm not rigid, I'm not top-down. Sometimes they are. And what we need to be is more adaptive. We need to be able to recognize that there could be multiple things that are true at the same time. AI will help us with that and break away from one set of rules to rule them all to having multiple sets of rules. That's where we need to get to, and that's what some companies are actually doing right now.
Love that. Sanita, any comments to what Malcolm has said? And can you also expand on, given your global role, when you think about implementing a framework to think about quality, at a scale, how do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I agree with Malcolm that, it's the framework has to have that different levels. And I would say even as you look at a data quality framework and you want to scale it across countries, regions, you have to have a good balance of how much you want to be globally universal standard versus how much of flexibility you want to give to that regional, local regulations. There may be different reasons, different cultures. So you want to agree on that balance. It's that lowest common denominator that can be globally standardized, but you have to be flexible enough. That's a balance. You have to have accountability in roles. If there are nobody taking care of data, then it's like, data quality is everybody's job. It's not some person who has a label calling data steward. It is everybody's job to look at data quality. So I would say, but you still need ownership, someone who's nurturing, taking care of it. You need like a gardener to look at it. You need best practices. This data, anything to do with data is a team sport. You have to have the stewards and the different roles, but best practices as in community of practice, community of interest. Some people they all want to know what about, even if they're not doing any data role, right? So that's one. The other is KPIs. If you don't measure, you don't manage, right? So what are the KPIs? What are the key performance indicators? How much of data, what does data quality mean? Does it mean that if it's above this level or below this level, then what is acceptable, right? And then lastly, data quality cannot be like a swivel chair. I do my job and then I turn around and I do data quality. Yes. It has to be embedded in the day-to-day process of how you're looking at data.
So it's interesting. You mentioned at a certain point something about culture, and I'm interested to hear how culture plays a role when you think about data quality frameworks at scale.
Yeah, no, I know. I can talk a whole day about data culture. I think, data culture is a decisions culture. And I like what Eric was showing when he started off, this data becoming information, becoming knowledge and wisdom. Actually, there's one more on the top. I should tell him that. It's decisions. Because when you take data and you add meaning to it, it becomes information. When you take information and you add context to it, it becomes knowledge. When you take knowledge and you add with insights to it, it becomes wisdom. But then you have to go one more step and you add purpose to wisdom, you can make decisions, right? So there is, it's not just sort of a flow, but there's added to it. So it cannot be, data quality cannot be like a program. It has to be part of your day-to-day process of how you manage.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, absolutely. Malcolm, I saw you did. Yes. Tell me more.
Sorry, what she said. Well, data culture. So I used to speak to CDOs every day. And what I would often hear is CDOs say, well, I can't deliver any business value because we don't have a data culture. And it would make me want to jump out of my seat, because data culture is a function of delivering outcomes to the business. It's not a dependency to deliver outcomes. It is a function of delivering outcomes. If you want a data-driven culture, if you want a culture that cares about data, we need as practitioners, we need to deliver business value. When we do that, our business partners will say, hey, that data quality thing actually matters because my sales have gone up. Or, hey, it takes me half the time to onboard a new supplier because I follow those data governance policies that actually really make sense, and now I get it. And I want to do more of that because I want more value. Culture is an outcome of delivering value to the business. It is not a dependency. If we are out there saying, I can't do anything because we don't have a data-driven culture, we are disempowering ourselves.
Wow. Wow. I think a round of applause. My goodness.
Thank you, Jody. She started it. Thank you. Checks in the mail.
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to add to that, when we talk about culture, we often think about, okay, what do we do? What does it look like? And the intersection of trust. We're talking about data quality. Obviously, we're talking about trust, and culture comes back to people and process, right? To, like you said, it's not technology. And so when you talk about people, do you have the executive sponsorship?
Yes.
Do you have beliefs? You will see that these are invisible things that actually run in any organization. Beliefs drive behaviors. Behaviors drive the business. So what are those beliefs underneath? Why do we have a problem of data sharing? There's some belief under that. So you have to look at that. You have to look at, it's always a tribe. There's some norms and rituals and values, and all that drives how you think of data quality. And then if you come to the, I always talk about culture as skill set and mindset, right?
Yes.
You have to have the aptitude and attitude. So you need to think of what skill sets, how are people aware of what they're doing has an impact on data quality? Do they understand that their action can be sitting there with bad data for years before anyone touches it? Do they understand that? So that behavior also is part of culture.
Yeah, and I want to pick up a little bit on what Malcolm said about value-driven culture, right? Value-driven is actually very important data quality, because if you ever work on data quality, there's no end to it. You can spend every last penny you have on data quality pursuing that last 0.01% accuracy, right? So a lot of companies, when we say it's data is people problem, like you mentioned it, most companies we know don't even have a good definition of what data quality means. Okay, and what's the right KPIs? And this is not just data; it's also AI as well. AI, same thing. The AI is going to be a bottomless hole if you want to talk about investment, right? Again, what value are you trying to achieve? What goals are you trying to achieve? That means then once you know what value you try to get, what's actually good ROI, then you have to figure out how to measure it, right? If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. You don't know what the ROI is. You have to then define the KPIs on data quality, right? Again, what's the goal of the data quality program? Then what's the ROI you're shooting for? How are you going to measure it? You'll be shocked how many people go into it without, one, don't even know what a KPI is, or they have KPI, they have no idea how to measure it. Sometimes the KPI is not even possible, right? It's just somebody's hallucination. So you got to make sure all that's clear. Then that will become much easier to say, okay, this is worth doing. This is not worth doing. Oh, by the way, then in this case, in order to drive this value to get this kind of outcome within a time frame, then a certain type of organizational model works, right? So there's only so much it is worth controlling centrally. So much you just have to delegate it out to say, hey, let the business unit, let the GO have their say, have their own stuff, because otherwise the model doesn't work.
You are so right about tracking ROI. And we can do this. By the way, there are still data leaders out there who are saying it is impossible to quantify the business value of data. They are wrong. We can absolutely positively do this. One of the greatest values of a partner like a Dun & Bradstreet is the fact that they can give you a benchmark. right? Here is a benchmark. Here's a reference data set from which you can start. May not always be perfect, but it's a starting point. It will tell you where you're starting from so that you can know how well you're improving, you're not improving, and build KPIs around that. I justified spend on Dun & Bradstreet just from that very thing the first time I ever partnered with the company when I was a customer over 15 years ago.
So we're coming to an end. We've got like 8 minutes left. I'd love to be able to open it to the audience here and just to see if anybody has questions for any of us. And yeah, I can see somebody on the back. Yeah.
Prachi.
Thank you, Isabel. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Excellent. Very interesting and informative conversation here. As I think about data governance, data quality, and the data culture and the context that we are talking about, and I think about the future that Gen AI is bringing to us, where AI is generating data. Right?
Yeah.
Would love to kind of get your perspective on how does that fold into the data culture and the governance framework, and what are some of the watch outs and guidelines that we need to keep in mind as we jump into that age?
Yeah, I'm sure you'll add, but I'll start. I mean, first thing is, as we take that whatever AI has built and you go to users and you're telling them this is a product, and you have to, and this has become a regulation, you have to tell them this was generated by AI. It has to be transparent, so they know that this is not coming from a human. That's one. But again, it also has to have the explainability. I know we talked earlier in this day. It has to say, how did I get there? It's not just some white box. That it has to be a white box, not a black box. It has to explain how did it arrive at that answer. So the education and training becomes even more nuanced to say that I'm not just giving you a product now. I'm not just giving you a service, but the training and education has to include how was it built. It has to go through the how the sausage was made, not just give you how it was said. So I'm sure you'll both add to it.
Sure, I can add to so one of the kind of the consequence of this is that, so we heard about scale a lot this morning,
Yes.
right? Scale has its good sides, but it also has an undesirable side effect, right? So I'm an engineer by training, so believe it or not, Newtonian physics actually applies to data quality. So for every action, there's a reaction. Okay. If I got an agent crawling your website, actually having a chat with your chatbot, right? Not only I'm capturing data on my side, I'm generating for you, the owner of the website. Your website log just got bigger. You now have a chatbot log. And AI is really, really efficient and scales very well at generating just a boatload of data. In fact, in 5 years, and there's already good sign that it's trending that way, there will be more AI generated data than human generated data. So now from a sales and marketing standpoint, in the last 10 years as a profession, as we became more instead of art and science, we're all very proud of being data driven. Now, if I can decipher the difference between a AI engagement versus a human engagement, I can separate the signal from the noise. So the consequence of AI that we're going to have to deal with very quickly is start to get smarter in figuring out how to actually separate the signal from the noise and deal with just the avalanche of data that's generated by AI. And that's a side effect that, everybody wants to talk about how great, all the efficiency that we can gain from it. On the other hand, we will have to actually invest in new technology, new resources. I told my dimension head that don't be surprised, he'll be hiring data scientists in the next 2 years, just to try to figure out which website visitor is actually real.
Yeah, it's a good question, but I'm honestly not worried about the data generated by AI because most of the data we have today, we ignore. No, 50 to 90% of all data. Now, this is a really, really wide swath because this is not publicly tracked and it's not regulated, but 50 to 90% of data sitting in data centers is what's called dark. It's just collecting digital dust, 50 to 90%. That includes a lot of IoT, a lot of sensor stuff, a lot of like just, but we've got a huge data hoarding problem today. Today, we've got a massive data hoarding problem. That is bang on. We need to be able to separate what matters versus what doesn't matter. So, I mean, if there was a few things that I would be telling data practitioners today around the whole AI thing, particularly those of you sitting in the room today, number one, we desperately need to up our game around how AI works. We need to go to AI training school, all of us. We need to be able to have, informed conversations about the difference between training and fine tuning. There is a drastic difference between tuning an open source model and training. Most of us, 95% of us, will not be training anything. We won't, at least from a Gen AI perspective, right? So we need to understand how these technologies work intimately if we are going to be the department that is leading the data science function, which I hope we are. But increasingly, data shows that CDOs are losing the data science function to CTOs for this very reason, because they can't have informed conversations around how the stuff works. Second, Ed touched on this already. Yes, we need to double down on foundations. You heard that over and over and over again, but we need to double down on the foundations that matter. Most unstructured data today is completely ungoverned. How many of you are governing your SharePoint servers in marketing? How many are governing you PDFs that are floating around on web servers that you don't even know exist, right? Gen AI solutions are optimized by and built on unstructured data, AKA text. And it's all out in your organization and largely ungoverned today. So if you want to double down on a foundation, that's the foundation you need to double down on. Understand what's out there, do some discovery, do some profiling, get your arms around that unstructured data if you want to start doing things like optimizing, for Gen AI, using RAG patterns, figuring out ways to build vector databases and utilize graph to help you minimize hallucinations and actually start to build some Gen AI-based solutions in your organization. Those are just a couple of things I'd be focused on.
By the way, there's a very simple test to know whether you're training or you're tuning.
Yeah.
If you don't have $100 million AWS bill,
what he said, yeah,
you're not training.
You're not training. You're not training. Yeah, I mean, the first generation of what was Llama was like 70 billion parameters. It took 12,000 cores running for 3 months straight. At a total cost, it was like something like 14, 15 million just to run the first iteration.
Yeah, the $13 billion OpenAI raise for Microsoft, 10 billion was in the cloud credit.
Wow.
Just to train the model. And the next generation model will be 10 times bigger in terms of AWS, in terms of cloud resource usage.
Wow. Sanita, any final thoughts that you want to leave with the audience? Advice for those that are starting the data journey, AI, everything.
Yes. We talk a lot about getting your data ready for AI, but start thinking of how AI can help in data quality management, right? Let's use everybody's ready for AI except your data, right? So you start working on how can I use AI to do data work, do the data work for me. And you'll see this term is getting very popular and it's going to pick up speed. It's called data observability. And it's used in many use cases, but for data quality specifically, it's identifying the issues and the root cause of the data quality and fixing it in real time. So data quality is not an afterthought anymore. It's as it happens, it's getting fixed, and you can look at elimination. You can look at, if everything is, this is what good means, and then you just only manage what's not good, and you treat it right there. I always say, you may not be in the business of AI, but AI is in your business. So do something about it, right? Yes. And I'll fill you with this last thought is, when it comes to data quality, ask not, is it good? Ask, is it good for what? Right? So good means what? Was it good for? It has to be fit for purpose. So.
Absolutely. Already, ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause to this incredible panel. Very passionate. Thank you very much. And I think over to you.
A lot of you have come to us and asked us, DNB, as being a data company, can you share with us some of the things that are happening from data management perspective and getting ready to adopt some of the AI capabilities that we need to be successful? So we talked about that. that AI and data management are going to work hand in hand, and you have to get your data right in order for the AI piece to work. So that's one. Second is practical strategies for overcoming data challenges. We had a really informative case study from IBM today, and a few of you stopped me during lunch asking me some questions and whether you could get some more details, because the challenge is shared across all organizations that are dealing with data. Entity resolution is a key priority, and getting the foundation is right to address any use cases that your sales and marketing, your finance, your supply and compliance team is trying to undertake. So getting that information was very useful for a lot of you, and it's putting things in practice, sharing that from practical perspective, the IBM study, some of the examples that Gary shared with you in keynote, that what DNB has done to put some of these things in perspective and in practice. So that was the second thing that I took away from this summit today. The second is case studies that are showing real world successes. So that really ties to what I just mentioned from IBM perspective, some of the examples that the panelists shared with us that they have seen work well or not seen work well. So that's also an important aspect to remember as you go back and you try to apply some of these learnings to what you're trying to do. Ethical governance is critical in AI, deployment and development. And Hillary delivered a very thoughtful keynote on that to share some of the things that she is seeing on a day in, day out basis, talking to not only internal DNB teams, as we bug her and her team a lot on some of the things that we need to be mindful when we're talking about AI, but also talking to her peers and customers, trying to understand what needs to happen from a regulation perspective. So that was also a key takeaway from today that you can utilize and build upon if there's more information needed. Again, someone even asked me during one of the breaks, Hillary, that if your team could share some more best practices with them because they're trying to undertake some of this stuff. So we'll have some of those engagements happening offline as well. So those were the four things I took away. If there's anything else that any of you want to share, please do share that in your feedback. The next thing I want to say is that this is not the end. This is just the beginning. This is the very first Data and AI Summit that we organized, but we want to do more of these. We wanted to get your thoughts. We wanted to understand what kind of topics, what kind of engagement we would get from this type of intimate summit that we wanted to organize. And based on your feedback already, we feel very optimistic that this was a success and that this is something that would be beneficial for us to continue with that. So look forward to events that will organize as we go into 2025. Do keep your feedback coming. Share with us what you want to see, what are some of the relevant topics that you want us to cover so that we can bring thoughtful speakers, thought leaders into these sessions, just like we tried to do today. So do share that, stay connected with us to share that feedback. Follow us on LinkedIn if you want to stay in the know. What we do is we try to post a lot of emerging trends, what we are seeing in the market, on our DNB Dun & Bradstreet LinkedIn page. So do follow us and you'll be in the know as well based on what's happening and what we share. And then finally, thank you so much. We could not have done this without you. You're the reason we did this. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us today. I know some of you even flew in from other places, and I really do appreciate that as well. So thank you for doing that. And secondly, a sincere and heartfelt thank you to our speakers and panelists that joined us today and shared their thoughts. So let's just do one round of applause for them. And drive safely and have a wonderful rest of your day.